Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Oh, man. I'm all settled in. Everybody ready to go? This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Tuesday, September 23rd. We are 265 days into that Gregorian calendar. We are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here, sunny Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your humble host, Jimmy Church. How is everybody doing tonight? Let's get this one cracking. John Lear, Dr. J, opening the show. How cool is that? Yes, I was listening. Couldn't help myself. Whoa was like, don't call in. Let John just do his show. Don't buy. Come on. I was like, I can't help myself. I can't. Spoke to John Lear. Didn't even know who I was. It was cool. I didn't hear it live. I was actually on my cell phone. So, and I managed to turn down the radio. Let's get this one cracking. Yeah. Big proud salute to the men and women in uniform. It's going down now. It is. Let's hope everybody stays safe. Bombs started flying last night. Man, if I'm ISIS, I just surrender. Just quit while you're ahead. All right, let's go. Let's get this one cracking. Got a cool show lined up tonight. James Swagger. I mean, how do you top John Lear, man? Well, how do you top last night? Man, Richard Allen Miller, was that epic last night or what? Thought about it all day today, man. It was just like, wow. Gotta pinch myself. Whew. All right, hold on. One hit of the Starbucks. Anniversary blend. Today, Bruce Springsteen, 65 years old. Actor Shy McBride, 53. His best movie, and he's good. He's funny. He's good. He's serious. He's good. Let's Go to Prison. And it's not only Let's Go to Prison. It's the title, see, the credits in the end when they're in the car singing. That just, I remember when we must have watched it. We rewound that DVD, which I own, 50 times. I never laughed so hard. Our dead guys' birthdays today. Check this out. Jazz master, sax man, John Coltrane. Born in 1926, died in 1967 at the age of 40. He died of liver cancer at Huntington Hospital in Long Island, July 17th, 1967. Unbelievable. but he left us with a lot. And that's a game changer right there, Coltrane. And check this out. Augustus Caesar. Yeah, I reached deep for that one, huh? Augustus Caesar, the first Roman emperor and relative of Julius Caesar. I believe Julius Caesar was like his uncle, great uncle, great uncle. Born on this day and died in the year 14 at the age of 50. And he was known as a pretty cool guy. He really was. He was known as a pretty cool dude. Augustus Caesar. There you go. Last night, Richard Allen Miller. I got to tell you, lots of email today and looking at what everybody had to say on Facebook and Twitter and email and so forth. That guy, he's a mage. That guy was unbelievable. And I get people asking me all the time, so man, you've interviewed everybody. Who you know what? After, Jay Widener, amazing. Bob Schroeder, amazing. Robert Schock, amazing. All the big names, great. David Icke and Wilcock, all good stuff. Richard Allen Miller last night. How was that? Oh, man. I don't listen to the shows, but if I'm going to go back and listen to one, it's going to be that one. Absolutely. Follow us on Twitter tonight. Let's light up the sandbox. Ken Lipson said earlier today, he tweeted in, he said, Jimmy, you got to give us a Jimmy top 10 tonight. We want a Jimmy top 10. So I did. I put it together. I've got a Jimmy top 10. We're going to light up Twitter here in just a second. Follow us on Twitter. That's what you want to do. Come hang out in the sandbox at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Hashtag DMRadioNet. I say it every night, but you don't get it unless you come and hang out. I am serious. Call my bluff. Call my bluff. I can't believe what Brian Anderson just tweeted. I cannot believe what he just tweeted. Wait till you hear my top 10. Wait till you hear my top 10. Brian Anderson, you and I are connected, and that is scary, and you'll find out why in just a second. You do. You want to come out. Come over to Twitter, hashtag DMRadioNet. It is unbelievable what goes down for the next 3 hours. Come and witness it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Call my bluff. That's what you want to do. Call my bluff. I'm going to tell you right now. Last night, my own Twitter column in TweetDeck had 1,267 tweets. I did 2. Come over to Twitter and watch this phenomenon tonight. It is amazing. Just get involved. Hang out. Become a Fade or Not. That's what you want to do. By the way, we updated the Fade or Not page over at jimmychurchradio.com. Go check it out. There's some new pictures there. I think we have some audio that has been added to as well. Facebook, YouTube, you know what to do. Follow, like, and subscribe. I am going to open up the phone lines tonight. I want to give away some stuff tonight. So we're going to do that later with Mr. Swagger, who will be live from Ireland. And, 3:30 in the morning over in Ireland. And it's... If somebody ever asked me to get up at 3:30 in the morning for a radio show, I'd be like, dude, no. Do you tape? Can we tape this thing? Call a number, 323-825-5045. Of course, you can Skype in, Fade to Black 14. I just leaned over. I just saw Eugene. Eugene just top 10 reasons Eugene needs his own podcast. Oh man, Eugene, I'll do that for you. I'll do that for you one night. We will actually do that, and I can guarantee we can get 10 reasons. Absolutely. Oh man. That's good stuff. Send me an email to jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Also, you can do that in confidence over on the website if you'd like, where we use special non-NSA, specially encrypted servers over there. That's right. We do. No, we don't. Do we? I don't know. Anybody seen the new header that we have over at jimmychurchradio.com? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. Laura Lee, she just hi and Fader Nas. She's tweeting. MG, Stallone's here. Steve, of course, Eugene. Oh, Fader Night is in the house. Rich in Vegas. Cortana. Gene Bateau. Jeremy Maddox here. I could scroll through this and get to everybody. I should do that one night. I'll spend an entire segment, 15 minutes, of just reading names in Twitter, just for the heck of it. It's pretty cool. I made some comments about Bill Cooper and some guy out there that I'm not going to name, and everybody wants to know who I was talking about. I'm not going to do it. And I'm addressing it now again because I did get a bunch of email about that today. Look, man, it's just no publicity. No publicity for that guy. You just do not badmouth William Cooper. You don't badmouth anybody that's dead, unless it's Hitler. Please. All right. Maybe Osama. All right. So Ken Lipson. Okay, let's light it up. Ken Lipson said on Twitter today, he said, we want a new Jimmy's top 10. All right, this is what we're going to do tonight. You ready? I cannot believe Anderson tweeted what he did. This is what we're going to do tonight. I decided to go all in. Chips on the table. Chips on the table. You ready? My top 10 greatest films of all time. My top 10. Now, before I get to the top 10, these are my honorable mentions, and these are films that didn't make it into my top 10. And this is just all off the top of my head. I did this today at about 6:30. Okay, you ready? These are my honorable mentions. Lawrence of Arabia, The Shining, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, The Wizard of Oz, Airplane, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Silent Running, The Shawshank Redemption, Star Wars, Animal House, Blade Runner, The Incredibles, Casablanca, A Bridge Too Far, Le Mans, Bullet, The Great Escape, The Breakfast Club, Alien, Forbidden Planet, Saving Private Ryan, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Labyrinth with David Bowie. Those are just honorable mentions. Now, what could be in the top 10? Because that is anybody's top 10 right there, those honorable mentions. And that's where my brain comes. So when you think these are the movies that I just find absolutely epic. And you know what the definition of epic is. So what could be my top 10? See, Fader Night, Blade Runner, my favorite. See, I'm with you. How could that not make the top 10? All right, let's do. I don't have the drum roll queued up. It's not that kind of show. We're not going there. My number 10 all-time film, Pulp Fiction. That's number 10. Pulp Fiction. As great as that is, there's 9 better. Number 9, North by Northwest. Number 8. Yeah, I see that right there. Brad Kelly, Forrest Gump, didn't make it. The Fifth Element, didn't make it. Big Lebowski. Oh, all good stuff. Number 8, Chinatown. Number 7, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The Jerk. What About Bob? Those are good. Laura Lee just came in with that. Number 6, Jaws. Number 5, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Love the Bomb. Number 4, and I couldn't help myself, a tie. The Longest Day and Apocalypse Now. Had to have a tie. I couldn't figure out how to get my number 4 in there. Number 3, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Number 2, all time, The Godfather Part 2. Greatest film of all time, The Godfather. Now, that's my top 10. How, and look at the honorable mentions, and I'm watching what it's Scarface. Yes. How do you squeeze these films in? How do you do it? Rocket Man with Harlan Wilson. Ed Williams, that was classic. That was good. How do you do it? Rocky, exactly. I'm watching Twitter right now. So what's your greatest film of all time? What is your number one? Platoon. Steve, right there. Contact. Yes, I'm with you. I don't know. It is so hard. But this is desert island stuff. If you're stuck somewhere, what are you going to watch for the rest of your life? Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane was tough. I got North by Northwest in there. So think about that. Yeah, for some reason, North by Northwest, when it comes to his films, North by Northwest does it for me. Plan 9 from Outer Space, Donna Colvin. That should have actually made the top 10. Full Metal Jacket, right there. Yes, I'm with everybody. It's so hard. But what's the film that you're going to watch for the rest of your life on a desert island? What's it going to be? For me, The Godfather. Or Part 2. Or 2001. Or The Longest Day. Or Apocalypse Now. Or Doctor Strangelove. Or Jaws. Close Encounters. Chinatown. North by Northwest. Pulp Fiction. I'm good with all of those for the rest of my life. It's tough, isn't it? It's real tough. Dune. Oh, man, you have no idea how many times I've seen Dune. You have no idea. I'm so with you. It's tough. I want everybody's. That desert island, the desert island movie that you're stuck with. Hostel for Michael K. For the rest of your life, what is it? What's that one movie that you're stuck with? Me, I can live with anyone on my top 10, but if it has to be one, The Godfather. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Tonight, James Swagger. Follow us on Twitter, @JChurchRadio, #DMRadioNet. Shoot me an email, Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange. Wow. I'll be back right after this.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, you have tuned into the latest phenomenon in late-night talk radio, Fade to Black, starring the inimitable Jimmy Church, showcasing his continuing quest in pursuit of knowledge of the strange and paranormal. Sit back, open your mind, and let's get cracking.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444, or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Yeah, I'm watching That Thing You Do from Dale. That's good. I'm with you on the Big Lebowski. I'm with you there. It's hard to... That's a tough call. If you are stuck, you got one to pick. You got one for the rest of your life. For me, anyone in the top 10. Clyde 2 just said I only watch a movie once or twice. I'm good. I can't do that. I'm once or twice in a day. I just watched Transcendence with Johnny Depp. Oh, man, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty shocking ending. I'm not going to give that away if you haven't seen it. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Like that subject. The singularity. All right. Let's go. Let's see what we got here. Let's do some email. This is from Neil. He says, "Hi, JC. I posted this on the Daily Mail website over here in the UK, but it didn't get past the censor. So I don't know if you will read this on the air, but here it goes anyway. I watched the news tonight and saw Arabs pleading for, again, I'm just reading this direct, everybody, okay? Here we go. And I saw Arabs pleading for the U.S. to bomb ISIS and put boots on the ground to help them. Well, how's this for a scenario? Operation. How to be the aggressor in a war and nobody else realizes it. Create a common enemy. Get them to commit terrible atrocities and invade or threaten to invade numerous countries who then beg you to help them. Bomb the bleep out of them, out of the common enemy, and then put boots on the ground and enforce the martial law to repel any threat of the bad guys returning. You are then hailed as the saviors while you can exploit the country's resources." Yep. You know, this is the thing. I say that all the time. That's my new quote. This is the thing. That's a crutch, but it is the truth. This is the thing. We haven't won a war in a long time. We haven't won nothing. Think about that. Now, World War II, okay, all right. That is the exception to the rule. Immediately after that, stalemate in Korea. Do I need to list? You know, look at that fiasco with Iraq and Afghanistan. What Grenada? We're going to count that. Panama. But anything that we've done, I mean, it's just been a complete and utter failure. We're not the king of anything, if you think about it. Libya, look what, it's just crazy. Anything that we have done, everything has just gone bad. Everything. We went in and did what we did in Iraq the first, 5 days, 6 days. Oh, it's over. No loss of life, or you know how it went down. You know what I'm saying? Figure of speech. And then we come away with nothing. Absolutely. Great email. This one's from Ben Miller. He says, "I just saw an article about the findings of a UNC physics professor that says this about black holes. Check this out." And I'm quoting here. "By merging two seemingly conflicting theories, Laura Mersini-Houghton, a physics professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, in the College of Arts and Sciences, has proven mathematically that black holes can never come into being in the first place. The work not only forces scientists to reimagine the fabric of space-time, but also rethink the origins of the universe," end quote. She goes on to say, "I am still not over the shock. We've been studying this problem for more than 50 years, and the solution gives us a lot to think about," end quote. Holy crap. What? I'm going to put up the links to this article, and it's a shocker. It's an eye-opener. And I got to tell you, it takes some brass cojones to even think about coming out and saying something like that. Wow. Another email from Ziggy Swenson. He says, "Here is something to consider since we've been talking rock and roll." Check this out. August 15th, 1977, the WOW signal lasted 72 seconds from deep space as recorded by SETI and was never heard again. The next day, August 16th, 1977, Elvis goes home. Did they need the king for a long-term tour? I hope so. Signed, Ziggy Swenson. Good email. That's cool. Another email from Demian Renata. He always comes in with something strong. He says, this is about the show last night, he says, the unified field is well, that's his vernacular. This is him writing. Let me start it over. The unified field is simply the result of dark matter plus gravity plus the third dimension. Think of dark matter as ink in a printer, gravity as the signal sending the image to the printed, and the third dimension is the paper. Now, the real question is, who's buying the ink? Demian coming in strong. Keep the guest requests coming, everybody. Everybody this week has been requested by you. Next week, check this out. Well, tomorrow, Douglas Dietrich in the house. Tomorrow night. Sure to be an entertaining evening tomorrow night with Douglas. I talked to him last night after the show. Talked to Doug. Oh, man, I don't know. 2 hours? Something like that. And it was one of those conversations. I just wish we saved it all for the show. But tomorrow night will be Douglas. Thursday night, of course, is Fader night. And I've got a couple of special guests that are going to come in and chat with us. I think we put them on the website. If not, we'll get it up there. But check this out. Thursday night, I'm going to have Tracy G in. Tracy G, guitar player for Ronnie James Dio. That's right. And that'll be Thursday night. And we'll take your calls if you want to talk to Tracy. And then after that, Neil Turbin is going to be here. Lead singer, frontman, original singer for Anthrax. That's right. Neil Turbin. And I got to tell you, I've known Neil for a long time. I've known them both for a long time, but Neil has got pipes like you've never heard. He's an insane singer, but a really cool guy. And we're going to talk dark stuff with both of them and take your calls. Now, how is that for a Fader night? How is that? Oh, hold on. I gotta read this. Just came in. Eugene posted his top 10. Let's go from 10 down. Number 10, Prometheus. Nice. Number 9, Superbad. Oh, there you go. Number 8, Star Wars, 4 through 6. Number 7, Predator. Number 6, Goodfellas. Number 5, TD Night. I don't even know what that is. What is TD Night? Clarify. Am I missing something? Number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy. Really? Number 3, X-Men. And I'm not sure which version of X-Men that is. Number 2, Matrix 1 and 2. Really? Number 2? Okay, I'll go with the Matrix 1. That should have, yeah, that's a tough one to exclude from a top 10. And number 1, The Shining. It shows you where Eugene is coming from. Oh, man. Dale just tweeted, Tracy G, great guitars. I believe, Dale, clarify this for me. Tracy G, I know you guys are from the same neighborhood. Did you guys go to the same high school, too? Where'd you guys go, like Pioneer High School? Did you guys go to Bishop Amat out there? Tracy G and Dale, West Covina, La Puente area in East of LA, I should say. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Dale has known Tracy for years. I mean, they grew up together. And, yeah, Tracy's an amazing guitar player. All right. So that sets the stage for tonight. James Swagger. Tomorrow night, Douglas Dietrich, Tracy G, and Neil Turbin, and Fader night on Thursday. And are you ready for this? All right, I'm going to leak out Monday. Are you ready? I'm going to leak Monday out. Peter Lavenda in the house. Oh, yeah. Right here on Fade to Black. Oh, big announcement. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this to music. Big announcement. Yes, we have been invited to speak at Contact in the Desert. The new date is in May. It'll be a lot cooler. We'll be in one of the big buildings there. And Fade to Black is going to broadcast from Contact in the Desert, but this time we got one of them halls. Oh, yeah. How cool is that? I'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Afraid of the dark? Don't move. Don't touch that mouse. You are listening to Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses on jimmychurchradio.com.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark matter.
Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter, Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Ho! Man, Doug Aldrich, you guy's frightening. This is Fade to Black only on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your humble host, Jimmy Church, and I'm ready. That's the music that cues it all right there. That's right. James Swagger. James Swagger, a prolific researcher, field investigator, and down-to-earth engineer. James Swagger has dedicated the last 15 years of his life to researching the megalithic sites and ancient cultures. His approach is simple. Use science and engineering to peer into the past. His passionate aim is to unveil humanity's true cultural blueprint. James has been to over 400 megalithic tombs dotted across Europe. Makes you wonder, what have you done with your life lately? In addition to stone circles and henges in search of commonalities and design, James utilizes his engineering background as a systems analyst as a utility to reduce the complexity of ancient megalithic sites. Swagger has just returned from Bosnia, where he visited the pyramids near the town of Visoko, northwest of Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I would like to welcome to the program back once again our dear friend, James Swagger. James, how are you tonight, this morning?
Hey, Jimmy, it's great to be on the show. I'm pumped, man. I'm officially awake now. I wasn't awake 20 minutes ago. I drank a lot of coffee there.
Are you drinking coffee, not tea?
I have to, man. I'm so tired. I only got an hour of sleep, Jimmy. I got up for the show. It's 3:30 a.m. here, but I'm pumped. I'm excited. I got a big day tomorrow. My lovely lady just flew in today. It's her birthday. Well, it's her birthday now. Spring equinox, or the autumn equinox yesterday. We got a big day planned. We're going to go to an ancient megalithic tomb.
What's her name, James?
Jana.
Happy birthday, Jana. And I'm sure she's 29.
Actually, I don't know. She's a bit elusive. But you don't ask a woman's age. Jimmy.
You just don't. I said I'm assuming she's 29. So there you go.
A prolific 29.
Yeah. That's such a gentle subject, isn't it? You need to always steer clear. How old do I look? Well, I don't know. You just let that go. That's all you do.
Jimmy, what a day! I've got the key. I've got the key to a 5,000-year-old monument. I'm going to take the lady there. It's the most decorated megalithic tomb in the north of Ireland. I have the key to it. It sits on top of a hill in a forest. I've been a few times myself. I love going there every time. It's incredible rock art. It's incredibly unique as well in terms of megalithic architecture in Ireland. But it sits in its own hill in the middle of a forest, overlooking the valley. You can see like 30 miles in any direction. Beautiful.
What's the name of the tomb?
Knockmany. Knock means hill in Irish, and Mani is the name of the place. So Knockman, anything with knock in it, there's like knock Naro, knock this, knock that, So Knockmany is the name of the tomb. You'll probably get it on Google Images there, some of the rock art.
It's crazy to me to think 5,000 years, and Ireland back then, James, and we've got so much to talk about, but when you wrap your head or your mind around 5,000 years and Ireland being isolated, it's isolated. And 5,000 years ago, it makes you wonder how the island got populated, first off, and who was there and the technology.
That's a good question, and I tell you what, Jimmy, it's what my life's research is heading towards. I want to know answers, Jimmy. The reason I'm doing this is for answers, and everything heads to these guys being a maritime culture. I'm looking at new DNA evidence as well, linking the Irish Celts with the Basque people of Spain. The Basque, they're very high in the highest population of Rh negative, and my whole family's Rh negative, by the way, Jimmy. Which means you really have a very special blood type, and you're going to be green or blue-eyed and dark-haired. And there's the genetic link, the same haplogroup with the Basque, and the Basque are maritime people as well. They say that the ancient Irish were colonized, that they colonized Ireland from the west, Jimmy. There is books, Jimmy, right? Let me go back to the start. There is books. The first record we have is from the 7th century, where they wrote down the Irish Gaelic tales. And they wrote down about these people called the Tuatha De Danann. That's what the Gaelic word is. Or sometimes they're called the Ishi. Basically, it means people of the mounds. Now, what happened was the megalithic builders came, did what they did, built the mounds. These are the mystery people that came from the west. With the Irish people, the Celtic, this Gaelic-speaking Irish, wrote down these tales in the 7th century. So they overlapped the megalithic people. There was an overlap of 500 years. So the only record we have of any megalithic people comes from the Irish texts. And it's very, very limited, Jimmy. It's not a lot. It's a couple of books. There's the Book of Leinster, and then there's the Book of Invasions. And from those two books, we have this really fascinating, interesting window, Jimmy. When you read about the mythology, of course they call it mythology. To the people who wrote it down, it was history. We don't understand it, so they call it mythology. But they say that some people say that they came in on a dark cloud. Some people say that they came from the Western Seas. Some of the stuff says that they looked incredibly beautiful are incredibly ugly, and nowhere in between. It reads like these guys look like elves or fairies, or they said they were able to go between different dimensions.
Right.
They also wrote down that they were able to. They had force fields. Are you ready for this? This is what the Irish tell, right? That they had force fields around the megalithic monuments, and there was battles going on. They were trying to breach the force fields. But that's what it actually translates as, Jimmy. It reads like science fiction, this stuff, man.
Okay, just for me, let me ask you a couple of questions. Let's talk about leprechauns for a second. and I'm being serious. That is a serious subject in Ireland. This is, it's folklore and it is something that is serious and it's when you were growing up, how did your family? How were you introduced to leprechauns, and And let's just start there. Let's start there because I have like 100 questions.
Funny enough, my granddad, he lived 96 years of age, Jimmy. He only died a couple of years ago. He only died 2010. He lived for 96 years. He outlived everybody, and he used to teach me. He was a great he was like a father figure to me as well as my granddad. But he would have taught me about, like, always told me that at the end of the rainbow, that's where everybody learns about leprechauns. But I do think that the leprechaun tale comes from a race of dwarfs that lived on the planet long time ago. I did interview a woman, I think it's Dr. Susan Martinez. She did a book on the lost history of the little people. If you look at ancient Egypt, there's the Bes figure, B-E-S, his name is, and he looks like a little dwarf. Almost like a leprechaun, Jimmy. You'll see this in all the museums around the world. There's Bes figurines. So I think there might be something to do to that. I think there was a race of giants on this planet, Jimmy, and I think there was a race of dwarfs, and then I think, there's remnants of us sitting there too.
And all of that interesting, well, not necessarily all of it, but a lot of you touched upon it, fairies and that type of folklore originated in Ireland, and did it just kind of go across the water into England eventually?
Yeah, you see, the thing is, there is nobody else wrote about the megalithic people. And when I say the megalithic people, they referred to these people of the mounds. They were associating this supernatural race of gods with the megalithic structures, Jimmy. The thing is, we don't have any other written evidence of these megalithic structures in any other region where the megalithic architecture is. We're incredibly privileged in Ireland, Jimmy. Incredibly privileged that we have such a high percentage of rock art. Something like 45% of the rock art of the whole of Europe sits in a 2-mile radius beside Newgrange.
Right.
And then maybe we have something like 60% of the rock art of the whole of Europe in Ireland. We're just above the rest in terms of the quantity of rock art. You look at the Danish passage tombs; they have no art at all. So we're incredibly privileged with the art. And we're also incredibly privileged with these 2 books that we have, giving us this tiny little glimpse of who these people were. Some of the stuff is actual normal stuff as well, about who they talk about the Fair Bogue. There was a race. They talk about a race of giants. They talk about 5 different groups of people. The Fomorians, the Fair Bogue, and the Tuatha De Danann. And how they all warred with each other and took each other over and what was going on. So, there were historical accounts in there too. But in amongst the historical stuff, there's this weird stuff about them being a supernatural race and that they were able to go, they were like dimensional shifters and stuff. And
right.
It's wild stuff, Jimmy. It's wild.
I want to talk about Scotland for a second. That was a pretty trippy thing that went down last week.
I can't believe, Jimmy, they voted no. There's so much outrage outside Scotland. I mean, English people, Irish people, Welsh people are like, they got bullied into a decision, Jimmy.
Well, who were they? Let's talk about this for a second. And I was excited about having you on, not only about Bosnia, well, because you are you, but you're coming in right on the heels of this historical vote, totally historical. I mean, this will go down in history, but Ireland has been dealing with the same thing. So when you look at what Scotland just went through, and I want to talk about specifics. I mean, there's talk about voter fraud and bullying and so forth. But is it better though? Is it better that the Commonwealth stays intact?
I think if they had voted yes, okay, and broke away from England, I think that would have been a good thing. But I don't think them going into the euro and changing their currency to a eurozone would have been good. I think stay the hell out of the eurozone. The euro is killing everything. They call it the United States of Europe. That's this nickname over here because it's slowly becoming that, and it's becoming a monster globalization program. However, the voting no, Jimmy. They don't realize what they lost out. They had a chance to do something. They don't understand their own wealth. They have so much oil money that the oil money goes to England.
A chunk of it does. Right. And
they don't realize their own wealth. They have fishing, forestry, and they could have gone it alone and laughed at England. England is desperate to keep them, and then they gave them all this sense of pride and sense of the Commonwealth and all this, and it's like, you know, they bullied them and they scared them, fearmongery, into making a decision. And the good thing is, though, you know, I'm sitting in Northern Ireland here, Jimmy, as you know, and it's like the same thing is they're talking about a devolution over here.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different, very, very similar in a lot of ways, but slightly different, because when you look at Northern Ireland and Scotland, very, very similar in terms of population. In Northern Ireland, 50% Catholic, 50% Protestant, 50% Irish, 50% British, whichever way you want to call it. They mix up religion and politics here, as you know. However, it's very, very similar in Scotland as well. I think it's probably 40% Catholic, 60% Protestant, or 40% pro-Scotland, 60% pro-British. So, and even that pro-British, maybe actually 10% is sitting on the fence. That's why the vote was so... It's literally down to the Scottish people that voted to stay. You know, they weren't originally Scottish. They're probably 400 years ago. You know, they were originally descendants from England or something, you know. So they're not true Scots, as you will. Like the same in Northern Ireland.
Right.
I mean, 400 years ago, people came over here, settled from Britain, and 50% of the population, they still claim British nationality. They call themselves British subjects. The same as Scotland as well. It's a similar thing.
And
you know,
Wales, and you can't forget Wales.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Welsh preserved their language, and they got kind of conquered. You know, they were a bit more mellower than the Scottish and the Irish. Do you want to know where the Welsh, English, Scottish, Irish kingdoms come from? It's when the Celts, they marched along the Danube, and they brought with them the long sword, and they dominated it. They were wiping out tribes, and they were just dominating when they marched the Danube. But when they got to the end of the Danube and then ended up in Brittany and France, they hit the end of the road, basically, of Europe. So they crossed the Channel. They left some of Celts behind, the Gauls, and they left them on the French coast up around Brittany. And what happened was the Roman Empire started coming up behind them as they marched along the Danube, but the Roman war machine was starting to develop. And what happened was they were clearing out and wiping out the Celtic tribes that were left behind. So as the Celts grew in number, marched along the Danube heading west, they were losing what they left behind. So there was just a migration pattern. And as the Roman Empire grew, it just got to the end of France. And this is over a few hundred years now, Jimmy.
Sure.
The funny thing is that the Celts actually nearly wiped the Romans out when they marched past Italy. They actually were fighting over wine, and the Celts had a disgusting wine, and the Romans had a very nice wine made from a different type of berry. Had they actually have finished that fight over wine, they probably the whole of Europe may have been speaking Gaelic or Irish, like. But the funny thing is, when they did get to France, though, I mean, they crossed over to Britain, across the Channel, and still today the word Britain comes from the Britannics. The Greeks wrote about the people that are on Britain, the Celtic people, the painted people.
Right.
They basically like Braveheart, where they had the blue paint on their face. What they used to do is run to the coastline and taunt anybody and beg them to enter their land, and they would slaughter them. They would literally shout and scream at them on the cliffs, like, "Dare you come to our land, and we will wipe you." And they had war paint on and swords and stuff. Like, they were nuts, like. So the Greeks never landed on Britain or Ireland. They refused to. They were like, "Oh, we're not going to go there. That doesn't sound too good."
No, they scared the crap out of them, and they'd never seen anything quite like a Celt. You know, because they called them the painted people, Jimmy.
Yeah. Now, when they got to Britain, things changed, and then they basically just spread across Britain like wildfire. They were untamed, and like, you know, and the same for Ireland as well. What happened was, though, when the British island of Britain came, the Romans got over there. They had to land in Colchester. They met Boadicea, the Celtic warrior goddess, and she was trouble to them. The Romans were nearly beaten by a woman, Jimmy, really badly. Like, I mean, in the end, they got her, but like, they were a laughingstock. The Romans were a laughingstock for a long time, Jimmy, because they couldn't take down a woman. And the Boadicea, she was like a red-haired Celtic warrior goddess. The women, the thing about the difference in the Celtic empires was that the woman and the man was revered equals. They ruled side by side. Sometimes women were revered more than the men. It was like a matriarchal culture as opposed to the patriarchal Roman culture. However, they had so much trouble with Britain. Ireland got off lightly, and what happened was once they got on land onto Britain in Colchester, they moved the capital then to London, which they called Londinium. But once they got there, they pushed them and pushed them and pushed them, and it's the natural terrain of Britain that defines the Celtic empires. They pushed them down to Cornwall, they pushed them out to Wales, and they pushed them up to Scotland. And it's the natural hills of Wales, that the west-hand corner of Britain. There's natural hills there. They couldn't beat the Welsh going uphill. So they went, okay, that's England, that's Wales.
That's
and then
we stop here. Right.
They came to Cornwall, the River Tamar. The River Tamar segregates the whole of Cornwall off from Britain. I don't know if you know about the Cornish Celts, but they were speaking a form of Welsh right up until the 1880s. The last person to speak died in the 1880s. But they couldn't beat them across the river, the Tamar, which is quite a big river. So they just went, okay, that's Cornwall. And then they couldn't beat them going up to the Highlands, going uphill again. And because they had so much trouble with Britain, they just left it at that. And that's where they put Hadrian's Wall. They just put a road across the top of Britain and left it at that. And Ireland was actually a holiday destination to the Romans. We have several coins. We know they were here, but they never came to conquer. They had so much trouble with Britain, they just went, well, we just got off lightly. They called Ireland Hibernia, the land that they went to on holidays. So,
have you ever gone the width of Hadrian's Wall?
I have walked the whole length of it, Jimmy. I actually have walked the whole length. I used to live up that way. I've lived in nearly every major city in the UK. I've been to every county in Ireland, and I've been to every island off the coast of Britain in my career as an engineer. When I worked as a systems analyst, I worked in all these remote places, Jimmy, like water treatments, power stations, wind farms for like renewable energies and stuff like that. And I was always in all these remote areas, which is where the megaliths were as well. I was very, very privileged to see remote places like the Outer Hebrides and stuff like that. But when I was up in northern England, I lived in Lockerbie. You probably know Lockerbie for the plane crash, but I had lived in Lockerbie, which is a tiny town, by the way. It's a very, very small town, which is on the Scottish-English borders. And I used to walk a section of the tree. There's a tree of Roman forts, what they call like a big chain of them.
Yes.
You look at them on the map. So you would stop at the fort and walk a length of the wall, and then walk from the next length of the wall to the next fort. And I did it in sections. I never did it in one go, but I walked the whole thing in sections, and it's a pretty impressive wall, Jimmy. I mean,
I would love to do it. Tell me, I'm so jealous, so I'm just going to live vicariously through you for a couple of moments here. When you get to those Roman forts, which now are just it's rubble now, but the outline of everything is there. How large were they really? I mean, in terms of meters, how big are they? Because I've looked at all of them, and it's kind of hard to grasp exactly what we're talking about here. But how big are those forts?
Well, the wall, for example, would probably be a couple of meters wide. In feet, be several meters high and several meters wide, and the wall would run into like a small fort. And the forts were like just like garrisons. And then they would have larger forts as well. So there were even two types, Jimmy. The larger forts were places where they would get through the wall or do some marketing goods through, sheep, cattle, whatever like that, and commerce and stuff like that. They would have a larger quantity of armed guards there as such. But there were smaller, like what you would call like a little garrison, a tiny little fort, and then there's like a much larger one. Some of them were like big complexes built into the wall as well.
Right, totally cool. And and I mean that too. I don't want to sound, like a doofus. I mean, it's just absolutely cool to be able to go and look at this. Hadrian's Wall was built when?
Around the time he was one of the last emperors, wasn't he? So probably around the fall of the Romans, probably around the time of Christ, not too far off. I wouldn't be well up on my Roman history, Jimmy. But basically, Emperor Hadrian, he went, look, we've had enough trouble with the Scots. Build a wall, shut them out. They were the most troublesome of all because they were more vicious. The Scots, the Scots and the Irish were like refused to be ruled. They were like so defiant. And there actually is a second type of Hadrian's Wall. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't good enough. It's above Hadrian's Wall. It's very much decimated now. There's very little sections of it left. But there was a second wall as well, Jimmy, around near Edinburgh, up past that way. So there was two walls, like a double line of defence line. Yep. But they built that wall at the narrowest point of Britain, which is about 80 miles wide. Massive undertaking, Jimmy. Absolutely massive undertaking.
It was a massive undertaking, but the only question that I have when I see Hadrian's Wall is, what were they trying to stop? It was too small. I mean, you would just go over and jump over it, basically, I would think. It's not like the Great Wall of China.
I know, it's like, yeah. I mean, that would have been something that you wouldn't have penetrated. But you got to understand, Jimmy, there were very limited resources there. This was the end of the Roman Empire. Hadrian said, "Okay, that's it. That's the end of the Roman Empire. We cannot conquer them. We're not going. We're at it yet." I mean, if you were in the Roman war machine and you were the lowest of the low, you were sent to Hadrian's Wall. That's where you were sent to. It's like, that's not the place you wanted to be, because you were at the troublesome zone. You were on the front line, basically. And it was like limited resources. Nobody wanted to be there. Nobody wanted to go there. They were all under, just serving their time out there in the Roman war machine, looking for their place in retirement.
Yeah, and the one thing that we cannot ignore here, the Romans were used to fighting organized armies. They were disciplined. The phalanx and how they were structured and military and uniforms, and they're fighting the Celts, the crazy, insane, just like guerrilla warfare. And if I'm a Roman soldier, that was the last. You didn't know how to deal with these guys, and they didn't. They eventually, well, the Roman Empire fell and they bailed, but they weren't defeating anybody.
You know what was the biggest thing that made the Roman Empire fall? They were using lead pipes, Jimmy. They all had lead poisoning. They went actually insane. Because of a symptom of lead poisoning. They had lead pipes and lead saucepans. Everything was made out of lead, and they abused the substance, and they all had lead poisoning. And a symptom of that is paranoia and insanity. Like, you will literally go insane. And be totally paranoid to the point where you think everybody's going to get. They were like assassinating each other because they were all so paranoid.
Yeah, right, absolutely. But there's a couple of things about the Roman Empire that I loved. One of them, the vomitorium. One of the coolest inventions ever. Eat everything you can, eat and drink, go throw up, and come back and continue the party. It's okay if you do that. That's just genius.
They had double glazing as well, Jimmy.
Yes.
And people don't realize, the military might that these guys had. That's why they were a war machine. They used technology, kind of what the British does today. That's why the British were always successful and owned a quarter of the globe at one point, because they used the current technology of the day as quick as they could. They absorbed it into the empire.
It makes you wonder where they got the knowledge from. Before, we jump into some ancient alien theory. That's not what I'm suggesting, but they certainly had, once they figured out the aqueducts and they figured out plumbing and they got water into Rome like they did, it just, back then, to think through that, and which are still running today, it's and still standing, it's a phenomenal thing to think about, and you have to respect that technology that they had, and concrete under the water, the setting concrete. It's just amazing things that the Romans pulled off. Absolutely.
I was in Vienna for my birthday, and of course that was the Roman crossroads of Europe, in Austria. And there's an underground Roman villa. It's underneath the streets. I think they found it during an excavation of a modern building or something like that. And you can go in underground. You just walk into a door on the street and you go into this like catacomb. It's bizarre, but you walk in and you can see the underfloor heating system. It's in cross sections. It's like aqueducting and fireplaces to heat the floors underneath. It's ingenious what these guys were doing. And in Vienna they had like pure water, like the mountain water from the mountains, just pumped into the streets. Everybody's just drinking fresh water from the mountains. These guys just, they were on top of their game. Definitely.
Check this out. I love our audience. This tweet just came from Klaatu. He says, the real Roman lead poisoning came from the sweet lead citrate they added to foods. Much more poisoning than from pipes and pots.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting. You know, you got to love this audience. I mean, you got to be on your game, James. You got to be on your game to hang out here.
We've got a clever bunch of people listening, Jimmy.
I love it.
Radio, Jimmy, we got some good shows on here, man. It's a beautiful. I'm happy to be a part of it too, you know. And it's I love your show, Jimmy. I heard the Graham Hancock show. What an awesome show that was. You got some big heavy hitters on the show, Jimmy.
Well, you know, it's a blessing, is what it is, and to have the, you know, you call them heavy hitters. You know, they know the show. And so when I go and I shoot them an email, and no matter who it is, yeah, absolutely, love the show. Yeah, tell me when. And I'm floored by that. But to have Graham come on, you mentioned that, and we all love Graham. But to have him come on, all you're going to do with a guy like that is just ask one question and just sit back. That's all you got to do. I'm not doing anything. You know,
I interviewed Graham, right? And I had a questions list there, Jimmy. And it was actually, I interviewed him I was actually one of the first people to interview him for War God, his novel.
Right.
And I got a TV interview with him coming up for Capricorn TV. I've got a TV interview when he gets back from America. He's doing a lot in America at the moment. I think he's back at the end of October. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I asked him the first question 26 minutes in, Jimmy, before he stopped talking.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It is so cool.
I don't even think I asked him a question. I just said, "Hi, welcome, Graham. How you doing?" And he's like,
"Boom."
I think did we have a new book out or something like that? And he's like, he launched, you know.
I love it, and those guys are so. Each one of them, all the guests on the show, really, but they know. They're so practiced in rehearsing the same questions over and over again, and they come on this show, and you know the drill. It's a different format for them, and their brain opens up, and they go into directions that they don't normally go in. It's so cool.
It's quick fire round, Jimmy, and it's just, you know, they don't. It's not stagnant. It's fluid, and you know. I had Rick Strassman on the show there myself, the DMT guy. He wrote DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and he has a sequel out, so you should get him on, Jimmy. He's a pretty good
I would love to get Rick on the show. I'm going to tell everybody right now, Swagger here has really helped me get a couple of guests on this show, more than a couple. And so the secret is out, James. Thank you for all of that.
Everybody, Jimmy, just in case I get bombarded with emails.
Well, I was talking about you last week on the show when we were talking about getting Bauval on the show, and a couple of other guests, and you were telling me about in Egypt there's no internet, that you can't do anything if you're stuck in Egypt right now. You're not doing any radio, and you're barely checking your email.
Yeah, it's bad. Like, you know, it's like I walked into the hotel. I was there this year, Jimmy, in February, doing some TV stuff, and I was like, I walked into the hotel, and I was like, I booked the hotel specifically for the internet. I don't care what the hotel looks like. I don't care how many stars. Tell me there's internet. Yeah, Wi-Fi in the room. And I go down, he's like, yeah, there's Wi-Fi in the lobby here. And I went, no, I want Wi-Fi in the room. He's like, we don't do Wi-Fi in the room. It's on your website. He's like, oh, we got this thing. And he brings me out this USB stick with like the crappiest of internet on it. And I'm like, you're joking. And he's like, that's what we do here.
And you got to have withdrawals. I mean, seriously, withdrawal. Well, you know what, though? It's kind of like if you're going to just turn off the TV for a month, you know, go find something else to do. And it forces you into really working and really researching and maybe not focusing on technology.
Yeah, for sure. You know, in Egypt is that type of place. You just need to switch off and enjoy the culture. You know, it's all being well. I might see Shock there next year. I had Shock on recently as well. I know you're a fan of Shock as well. You know, great show I had with him and Walter Clutton, and they're doing the CPAC conference. So I had a couple of them on, the CPAC guests on as well. And Shock's doing a tour next January. I might be there, Jimmy. I might. I don't know. There's a lot. I have a big undertaking to do it. If I do it, I've got 3 tours back to back. I don't even know if I can pull it off financially, but if I can, I'm going to try. It'll be for TV interviews, but Shock's going to be doing a tour there. I might be able to interview. I know people that's there that know him, so I said I might come out. If I can't swing it, I will. But
yeah, I saw that. I actually saw that on his website, and I was wondering how many people, when John Anthony West or you or Bovell or any of these guys are shocked, how many people go along on these tours? Is it 30, 40, 50, 10?
Well, the likes of Shock or Bovell or Hancock, they'd probably get 30 to 50. I do tours, Jimmy, for megaliths in Ireland, but like 5 at a time, like private tours. I used to do them in bigger groups with people that come through the airports and on a tour a long time ago. It's a waste of my time now. I literally haven't got the time to do it anymore. I'll do a private tour with 4 or 5 people. But Shock and they'll probably get anywhere between 15 to 30 people.
Would you
by the way, Jimmy, that's quite you don't want to be managing more than that on the tour, because it's like you don't want to be going into the second bus.
Yeah, exactly. But would you take me to Newgrange? Would you take Wowo and I to Newgrange?
Jamie, I have the keys to ancient monuments. I've got 4 ancient monuments I have keys to.
Man.
I just take you on a private tour. I just, you can actually, this is how funny Ireland is, Jimmy. You'll appreciate this. You can go to somebody's house and knock the door and get the key to a 5,000-year-old monument and just bring it back when you're finished. If you go to England, it's under lock and key. You have to go through the prison guard system. It's like
right.
You ask for the key. Who are you? It's like, and here we have directions to somebody's house from the monument, how to get there and to get the key. Now you might leave a driver's license or a $50 note or something like that.
Crazy.
Just for a deposit. But
could we actually do something like? Could we get some sleeping bags and sleep in Newgrange overnight?
Yeah, well, not Newgrange. Newgrange, I will say Newgrange is the only one. It's like the prize. It's like King Tut's tomb. You know what I mean? It's like the prized possession, and it's like that thing's under lock, and it's open 24/7, for tourists. So, it's the prized possession of the island. Really, it's like our Great Pyramids, basically.
Sure,
Jimmy.
Yeah, no doubt. But I would love to just.
But there are ones, Jimmy, up in the west of Ireland where I live, up in the northwest here. In Sligo, there's no doors on them, and you just walk in. You could sleep back in there all night. I actually had a couple of people do that for a research thing when I wrote my Megalith Acoustics book. They were camping out up there, but yeah, a lot of them don't even have doors on them. Newgrange, they have pumped all the money into Newgrange. Far from being cynical, Jimmy, I hate it. It's like they pump all the money into Newgrange. I always speak negatively about the monument service. We have one, Jimmy, right? It's called Queen Maeve's Cairn. It's monstrous. You can see this thing from 20 miles away. That's how big this thing is. It's monstrous. It's on top of a mountain. It's a Newgrange type monument. There's slippage covering the original entrance. We don't know, and they won't even excavate it, Jimmy. It's just sitting there and they go, well, maybe there's no tomb inside. Maybe there's no chamber. Well, maybe there is too.
Why don't they excavate? Is it a money thing? I mean,
yeah, they presume there's nothing inside, so they don't want to waste it. See, what they did was they quarried some of these, Jimmy. With something like about 100 of these left, Jimmy, these megalithic chambers like Newgrange. Now, Newgrange is very well preserved because until about 1699 it was open for the first time, and one of the farmers, Campbell, he went up to get some building materials to build a road or something, and he's just started quarrying the mound. He didn't know it was Newgrange. It was just all slippage. It didn't look like it likes today.
Right.
And then he happened to just hit the entrance on the first go, and they went, oh my God, what the hell is this? And they realized the importance of it. So there've been people going in and out of it, but it was basically unheard of until 1699 because of the slippage. Now, there's another one nearby called Doth, forgotten about, used to be on a tour. They don't even bring it's some of the most important rock art in the whole country because there's a constellation on it representing the Pleiades. Pleiades is incredibly important because we probably revolve around the Pleiades in a long cyclical motion. It's a bit astronomical sciencey. I won't go into it, but all ancient cultures revere to the Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades. So this rock art is incredibly important, and it's just out in the rain getting worn away. It's not protected. And they protect Newgrange and Notes with straw every year, and they make sure it doesn't get the harsh winter climate, and they just forget about the other one. It's like there's no money to be made in that one because there's a hole in the top of it. They quarried it in the 18th century. They stuck dynamite into the top of it and blew the top off it, thinking there was a chamber inside. They couldn't find it and just left it like that. Another one in Lough Crew, they quarried one half of it away and they couldn't find the chamber, so they assumed there was no chamber inside. However, the one in Lough Crew, I think they started on the wrong side because there's a quartz pillar on the opposite side and there's two triangular stones diagrammatically opposite. Looks like there's a chamber there. There is the evidence to suggest that they just started on the wrong side. So it's like they don't look pretty anymore, Jimmy, so they just forget about them. They keep the ones that are pretty, and pump all the money into them.
This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We are talking to James Swigert, live from Ireland. James, you just reminded me of one thing. Do you remember, I think this was about 2 or 3 years ago, and it blows my mind, but down in Belize, there was a condominium developer down there, and they had a pyramid, a Mayan pyramid.
With a bulldozer.
Yeah, and they bulldozed
the road. I nearly cried when I seen Jimmy. I nearly cried. I love the Mayans. I researched a lot of stuff, Jimmy. I love archaeoastronomy, as you know. That's what I wrote about Newgrange. I'm concentrating on the megaliths in my career as an author. And I researched some of the acoustics effect of these monuments too, which I think I talked about last time. But
yes,
I do keep an eye on other archaeoastronomy. I love Cara Hunch too. I know we're talking to Graham about that as well. I'm a hot little potato with that one as well. I think I have Paris Harouni's book. I have a copy of Paris Harouni's book on the shelf there, and I keep an eye on all these places. And I think Mayans and the pyramids, their astronomy was so advanced, Jimmy.
How could this is when you are told, and I know there's a money play involved here, but when you are told by the entire world, stop what you're doing, dude. It's a Mayan pyramid, you cannot continue with this. Stop. And it was like, no, don't have to. I own the property, and the Belize government didn't stop them and didn't step in. I just cannot. I can't fathom that type of morality where you just don't care. Something that is that old and it is sitting there, and they literally took it down.
It's crazy, Jimmy. It's crazy. I nearly had a tear in my eye.
I did too. Absolutely. Now let's change gears a little bit. You were just in Bosnia.
Sure.
And
Bosnia, Jimmy.
We were talking about Robert Schoch earlier. Schoch was on this show. Oh, by the way, do not let me let Cara Hunch go. We're definitely going there in a little bit. But
sure.
Schoch was on the show, and I asked him very directly, are the Bosnian? I mean, the question was, are the Bosnian pyramids real? And he said he used some bad words. And stopped me. And he said, there's nothing to investigate there. It is completely natural. That's it. Let's move on. And I was a little taken aback in that he didn't even want to leave a crack in the door. Okay. He didn't want to leave any possibilities for discussion. Mm-hmm. And we all respect Robert Schoch. We all do. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like Graham Hancock or anybody else that wants to speak at something with, so definitive, they make up your mind for you. It's like you think 2 + 2 = 5, and somebody comes along that's really smart and says, no, 2 + 2 = 4. And then that's it. Okay, so now 2 + 2 = 4. And that's where he was with the Bosnian pyramids. Mm-hmm. So you were just there. So let's start with your first impressions, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Sure. Should I just say, I think Graham, when I was there sitting for my first day on the table, I didn't know, but Graham Hancock was there a couple of weeks just before me on a private tour. So, just to let people know, although Schoch says what he says, and I asked Schoch myself last week what he thought of, I thought what he thought of Samir, the researcher there. And I got a very politically correct, I didn't get any bad language, I got a very politically correct thing. But there's still a lot of people flocking to this thing, Jimmy, because they're curious. So curiosity will still bring people there, Jimmy, whether Shock says it or not, you know. And myself too, I'm an engineer and I'm a scientist, Jimmy. That's what my background and my career is. And I wanted to look at, and I wanted to see evidence. I wanted to say, show me what you got.
Were you there with Samir? Was he there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was out in the field and I was. To be honest with you, I originally came for the conference to televise the conference, and there was a few people there. You know, I had Michael Tallinger there, Valery Ufrov from Russia, talking about his Russian pyramids in Siberia. He's building a 30 pyramid complex there, and so I wanted to meet some of these guys and do the conference. So I had other reasons for being there too, but. Curiosity got me there. I went out in the field. First time I seen it, I think it's incredibly interesting to look at. It's incredibly interesting, even if it is a natural structure, Jimmy. It's still incredibly interesting. It looks so much like a pyramid. Now, there is mountains, Jimmy. We have one in Ireland. We have one in Donegal, where I'm at, called Mount Errigal. It looks like a pyramid. We have another one... Croagh Patrick in Ireland, it looks like a pyramid as well. Now, we have natural mountains that look like pyramids. Now, does that mean they are pyramids? No. I mean, it looks like a pyramid, and they're incredibly interesting. But if it is natural, Jimmy, it's one of the most interesting natural pyramids that there is, if that makes sense. It's probably because it looks so much like a pyramid more than anything.
Well, a natural pyramid is still a pyramid because of the shape. I get that. But,
okay, now, here's the thing, okay?
But, right, okay, go ahead.
So we're looking, when you look at it from one angle, it's got a triangular face, okay, on three sides, on the front of it and to the left and to the right. The back of it is filled in because of what they say is a landslide from a global flood or whatever, cataclysm, something like that. The three triangular faces does face north, south, east, and west. That's uncanny in itself, Jimmy. It's not just that it's like three triangular faces.
Did you verify that, by the way?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's easy to verify. I always bring my compass. I have a military grade compass, and I have a digital compass too, Jimmy. I have a megalithic toolkit. I laugh, and people go, "What the hell is in a megalithic toolkit?" I've got GPS. Digital compass, magnetic compass. I've got everything in a little toolkit.
Well, yeah, because anybody, when you make a claim like that. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Here are the faces. Yes, and they are northwest, east, and south, and they're precisely done, and it is direct. Okay, that's a claim. Okay.
Have compass will travel. Jimmy.
Have compass will travel. So you did verify that these faces are indeed north and south.
Sure.
Okay.
Now here's the thing: it's covered in trees today. Okay, as are the Chinese pyramids now too. So it's hard to picture what was there. Now, they have started digging into the soil to get to the pyramid, what they call a pyramid. And they've come up with concrete. There's 4 pits that are digging up. They have dig pits, and it looks to me like it is concrete. It looks to me... by the way, the Mayans used concrete too. I know we were talking about the Romans using concrete, but the Mayans did too. And the Mayans' concrete is very, very sophisticated, Jimmy. Very sophisticated. It's stronger than our own concrete today, and we don't know how to replicate the concrete that the Mayans had. So just to let you know that there is concrete-covered pyramids. So just because we have the Great Pyramid, we don't expect to find stones. It doesn't necessarily have to be in stone. They could have took a natural hill and shaped it and then encased it in concrete, Jimmy. I do kind of favor that. That's my best guess if I had to.
Well, are you being, and we're going to continue this line of questioning if you don't mind, and you and I did this off air, and you know where I'm coming from, so I'm going to hit you between the eyes. Is this what you have been sold? Are you buying what you've been sold? Are you picking up what Samir is putting down? Or
this is the sale that was attempted.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not an expert. I haven't seen the documentation for the concrete. I've only been told this. Yeah. Now, a lot of this stuff is local people, Bosnians, Croats, Serbs. Local people, and they say they sent the concrete for testing in Oxford, and they didn't give back the sample, and they wouldn't test the second sample, and they said they tried it outside their own. It's all hearsay as far as I'm concerned.
Well, how do you know, you've been researching things for a long time. When you hear that, what's your conclusion? When you hear, are you feeling a dance?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I don't like it. I don't like it, Jimmy.
Sure.
I would like to see more Western people getting involved out there. Put it like that, Jimmy. And like people from America, England, you know, other than local people. Because that's the way this thing's either going to be proved one way or the other. By the way, this concrete has been dated to 30,000 BC. Now, Carmen Bolter, she's a pyramids researcher, Dr. Carmen Bolter, you know, from the Pyramid Code fame, and she's pretty convinced that it's the Bosnian Pyramids. So, you know, I have some people that are friends, Jimmy, that's been on the show, and they're going, yes, it is, and then I've got other people attacking me saying, no, it's not, and they're all fighting with each other, and it's like, it's a vicious, hot debate, Jimmy, you know, and it's like, to be honest with you, I'm reserved. I haven't seen enough to say, yes, it is, and I haven't seen enough to say no, because I think it's worthy of at least a bit of research. You know?
Right.
Now, apparently, are you ready for this? There is something like a medieval fort on top of this thing. And apparently the local municipal has extended the protection 100 times radius around the top of the medieval mount to stop them for their digging. I think that's convenient too.
Yeah.
You know, so they can't dig anymore. So we're only looking at 4 dig pits. It does look like concrete sections were laid down. How you would date that? I mean, they've dated a leaf in between 2 layers of concrete. I mean, it's a bit flimsy, to be honest with you. But
to go to 27 and 30,000 years, some of these numbers that have been thrown around, you need to really start backing that up. I mean, when I read the leaf account, right, the carbon dating on the leaf, well, look, if it's natural and this natural concrete, of course, a leaf got stuck in between 2 layers of sediment that eventually turned into concrete. That's my logical side. Before I start jumping
I will say there is one area of concrete. I have footage of all this, Jimmy, anyway. I still need to look at the footage. I have one section of concrete. It looks like there was a strip laid down, like quite a large strip, and then another one with an overlap, and then another one with an overlap. There looks to be like 4, all the same size layered concrete sections. It looks like somebody was laying concrete. It does look like that. However, you know, does that mean it's true? I mean, you need to put all this stuff together and say, yeah, it is worthy of more research, but it's not being done. I mean, the tunnels that are there as well, Jimmy, I mean, they're not actually underneath the pyramid. They're heading towards it, but they're not under it.
Right. Okay, we lost audio. All right, everybody. Yeah, little Skype issue, but we're all good. We're back. This is Fade to Black, only on the Dark Matter Radio Network. We are live with James Swagger from Ireland. James, are you still with us, my brother?
I'm still here, brother. I'm hanging in there.
Yeah, that was interesting. You start talking about Samir and the tunnels and the possibility of things being natural, and blip, there you go. So it happened. So let's pick up where we left off. We started to talk about the tunnels, and I want to kind of stay on that for a second, if you don't mind. He in the videos that I have seen, and I know that you shot video there. In the videos that I have seen, some of it does look man-made. It does. Some of it does. But some of the tunnels, it seems like he's digging and saying that that's the feeling that I get, that he's doing the digging, that the tunnels aren't actually there.
I don't get the tunnel business. I think if it's real and his intentions are real, well, then he's using the tunnels to get to the pyramid. However, if that's the case, then do that. However, I think they're trying to sell the tunnels as worthy of interest in archaeology sense. And I'm like, well, I think they're glacial tunnels. I think they're from a glacial. They say there's several civilizations used the tunnels that they look like they're blocked up man-made evidence of man working in there, blocking up some tunnels. And I really don't get the tunnel complex. I don't think they. However, look underneath the Giza Plateau, Jimmy. There's tunnels all underneath the Giza Plateau. A lot of pyramids have a tunnel complex underneath them. They would need to start heading towards the pyramid pretty soon. Some people think he's buying time rather than just going for broke and heading underneath the pyramid. People think he's buying time, trying to get.
Well, okay, this is where I'm going to call a spade. When we are talking about Karahunj, 12,000 years old, or we're talking about Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old. We can look at that and know that's man-made, and there's evidence of it, and it's case closed. Now let's go and discover more about those sites. We don't have that yet, or do we, in Bosnia?
Nothing like that, Jimmy. Nothing like that.
Is there? Okay. Here's another direct question. Have you seen one thing that makes you pause? One thing where you go, okay, there's a possibility here. What is that one thing?
We have concrete, but there's nothing concrete.
Oh man! You're an engineer. Does concrete like that occur in nature?
There is natural man-made concrete. I mean, it's basically sediment. Sediment gets compacted and naturally put together. Does it lie in straight sections? Over and over and over? No. And there's several dig pits there. I think it's worthy of more, but they've stopped digging. They can't dig on the pyramid anymore. If you ask me, it's a stalemate. The only route they have now is to dig these tunnels in towards the pyramid. And then are they going to find the eddy chambers, or it's...
I'm going to read this quote. Okay, this is from Boston University's Curtis Runnels, and he says he's an expert in prehistoric Greece and the Balkans. Okay, he states, and this is a quote: between 27,000 and 12,000 years ago, the Balkans were locked in the last glacial maximum, a period of very old and very dry climate with glaciers in some of the Dinaric Alps. The only occupants were Upper Paleolithic hunters and gatherers who left behind open-air campsites and traces of occupation in caves. These remains consist of simple stone tools, hearths, and remains of animals and plants that were consumed for food. These people did not have the tools or the skills to engage in construction of monumental architecture, end quote. That's a pretty scary statement. And I don't know how Samir overcomes that. Look, I want those to be man-made pyramids, all three of them. Or is there three? There's four, right? Or is it...
Yeah, I didn't even get to see the other ones. I only got to see the main one, Jimmy. You know what was most interesting of all my time in Bosnia? Is we drove south to the border of Herzegovina, and a place called Darsen. You can look this up online. Darsen megalithic wall. It looks like something in a Cusco, Jimmy. It looks a bit more cruder and a lot of weather beaten. It's up on top of a massive hill or mountain, if you would call it that. And it's got this really intricate blocks that are 6-7 sided. Not your normal masonry, Jimmy.
Right.
These strange shapes and all that. It's a good bit. Now that was on the tour. However, I think that was the most interesting thing I seen on the tour personally, because that's from an engineering perspective. That's something I can touch. I can say that's very awkward to build with 6-7 sided stone. Why would you do that? It's very like Cusco.
When you say Cusco, I mean that's pretty dramatic. Does it hit you like Cusco too, as well, as far as taking your breath away?
The wall isn't as prolific as Cusco. I mean, there's only about 100 foot of it. So it's still an impressive wall, and then it's impressively built with all the small and strange angles, fit together snugly. So yeah, it's impressive, but it is not prolific in terms of a complex. It's just a wall with a gateway through it.
Right, right. Well, I want to come back to that. I do want to stay on. I want to stay on the pyramids for a second because you're somebody that we respect when it comes to this type of stuff. And so, when you first went to the pyramids and met Samir, your expectations are one thing. You want to walk away from that with, you want your mind changed. Mm-hmm. And so did you now, as you left the pyramids in Bosnia, what's your gut? Where does James Swagger now stand on the Bosnian pyramids?
Different to when I went. I'm listening to both sides of the argument, and I'm probably no different, Jimmy. I'm actually I'm probably just a bit better informed on both sides. I think there's for and against, and I'm so split, Jimmy. It's like 51%, 49, something like that. It's not an even 50.
Okay, well, which one is the 49?
51% in the negative, saying no. 41%, and only by 1%, Jimmy, because I think it's just because it doesn't look like a pyramid. Hey, what if there was a cataclysm, Jimmy, and a big flood came in? I'm not a geologist. I can only look at the abnormalities of these triangular faces and their north, south, east, and west. I think that's the red herring to look at. If you push it out aside and you prove it, no, well, at least you had a look. At least you did some work.
Right. How much? And we're talking also. It is very, very large. I mean, what kind of undertaking are we talking about here to strip away all of that, the trees and the vegetation to actually take a look-see?
It's not going to happen, Jimmy. It's not going to happen. Even if you had an open checkbook, you wouldn't spend it.
Well, if it was a real man-made pyramid, somebody would spend the money. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's never going to get off the ground in research, Jimmy. I know that. But the thing is, it sits in the middle of other natural hills, Jimmy.
Yeah, I've seen enough pictures, and I've investigated as much as I can from this side of the pond.
Yeah, and that's a valuable piece of research. I mean, there's so much out there on it. You could do that. I had Stephen Mailer on, and he's like pretty irate about it, and he's right in what he says. Like, a leaf. Like he says, you're going to tell me this thing's 30,000 BC because of a leaf, and I want something more than that, Jimmy.
And then I've got another quote. Check this out. This is in 2007, a report by Egyptologist Nabil Mohammed Swellam said. He published in the Archaeological Park, and he went on to say that the Pyramid of the Sun, which is the main one that we're talking about, was the world's largest pyramid. After 2 visits to Visoko, he realized a report in 2007, which he concluded, and I'm quoting here, arguments in favor or in disfavor have no effect on the fact that the pyramid concept and the properties are there for everyone to see. However, in 2010, he released another report in which he clarified that he does not claim it is a man-made pyramid, but rather that he uses the term for any feature, natural or artificial, which is a geometric pyramid. He does not exclude the possibility that it is man-made. And so you have, an Egyptologist that is also on the fence about this. And for Samir, now he's got this to back him up. Well, look, an Egyptologist has been here. He can't make up his mind as well. And so the world is perplexed on this. If I was Bill Gates and there was some evidence of this being man-made, I'm dumping some money into it. There's going to be somebody out there to go and dig and remove some trees and get under there to see what is really there. Or is it just a natural formation?
Here's the thing, and if it is natural, you see, there's they talk about this energy beam that you can measure at the top of it. However, if you ask me, Jimmy, a natural pyramidic hill will do the same thing as a man-made one.
Sure.
It's going to put a frequency. There's earth energies, Jimmy. Earth energies are all telluric currents. They're all around the earth. That's my background, electrical engineering. electronic, and I know frequency. I get it. This is the one part of the evidence I get. And like I said this to Maria Wheatley as well before I went down. She's like, I think it's incredibly interesting with the beam thing. She goes, well, you're going to find it on a natural. I went, that's true. However, is it more potent or is it a highly intense beam? They talk about this. They throw this 28 kilohertz beam coming out the top of it. That doesn't mean anything to me. The intensity of the beam means something, not the frequency that it's coming out at. If it's a very high, potent, intense beam, well, then that's something to talk about. There are cloud formations, strange cloud formations above the top of the pyramid, Jimmy, because there's a beam coming out of it. However, that would be a telluric current, a natural telluric current, and I don't see any highly intensity. There's pictures of clouds forming over the top of Kukulkan pyramid in the Yucatan Peninsula. So, I mean, this happens over pyramids because of the pyramidal shape. It's a natural phenomenon that happens over pyramids. Isn't that a design feature in man-made pyramids? Perhaps, but it will happen over a natural one too. I looked at when I came home, I looked at the evidence for the beam. That's the science. That's my territory. It's like, I don't think it's concrete evidence. I don't think it's something worthy of, putting my fist on the table saying that's definitely high technology there. It's incredibly interesting. Again, I think it alludes to, if anything, pyramid shapes and energy beams, but they're natural or man-made. Again, like you say.
Yep. Okay. Look, that's why everybody is wondering what you saw there, and including myself. And we would all love for something like that to be discovered, just like Göbekli Tepe. I mean, when things like that get discovered, and it's new and it's real and it's fresh and it's something to discover and investigate and learn, it's amazing. But it just may not be what we want it to be. And is it heartbreaking? I don't want to run this into the ground. I just want to know the truth. That's all. I just want to get to the bottom of it. And or is this, a snake oil salesman? Is that what we're dealing with here? And theatrics is half of the sale, and if he's going to say that these tunnels are man-made and there's concrete and it's this old and the pyramid is, well, we're going to listen. We want to believe, we do. But
I also say this, Jimmy, you're always going to get theatrics, whether it's real or not. Even if it's a real thing, you're going to get theatrics. People are going to exploit it. Look at the Great Pyramid. They're digging out the extra chamber. The media attention over that, and the robot went up Ganderbrink's door and all that, and all of a sudden, they're making God knows how many million on the footage for selling it to National Geographic, and there's a whole corruption over that. And there's always going to be theatrics, even if they're real pyramids, no matter where you're at in the world, or any type.
Yeah, and with Gatenbrink's door, let me tell you something. When that went down, that was at the very, very beginning of the internet, okay? That was, I'm going to guess here and say 95, 96, 97, somewhere in there. But I watched that, and I watched that unfold. I watched everything that I could on it back then, and I ate it up. But and still to this day, I'm still totally fascinated with it. But and don't forget the writing that they found with the camera in that little tunnel. It wasn't really hieroglyphics, but there were some symbols that were cut in that they saw and dropped the camera. Well, you know what? That's real. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay. Did it lead to another tomb? No. Did it lead to something? No. But we're discovering and learning. And that was a fascinating, oh man, that couple of years with Gatenbrink's, oh man, that was good stuff. But it was also real.
Well, I presume you know Chris Dunn's theory of the Great Pyramid. Sure. Chris Dunn has been to the Bosnian Pyramids, and he don't like it at all. He's like, no, this isn't happening.
Chris is a very, 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 talk about black and white. That's a black and white guy right there.
Yeah, I've had him on the show a couple of times. He actually coached me what to do when I went out to Egypt. He said, if you get to the Serapeum, get your straight edge with you, get into the boxes. I documented this, Jimmy. I think I could talk about the Serapeum. I think it's one of the most fascinating things in the whole of Egypt. That and the giant crystal compass. Two things. Great. The Great Pyramid it's fantastic, Jimmy. It's fantastic. But outside that, I mean, you could just spend your life researching the Great Pyramid because it's a fascinating monument left for a legacy of mankind. But set that aside, when you go to the Serapeum, you have these giant boxes, Jimmy, to within 1,000th of an inch, laser precision, flattened surface. Like, we didn't have that tolerance even to make mirrors until the 60s, Jimmy. To make mirrors for telescopes.
I'm so jealous.
Chris Dunn was there. Now, the Serapeum was closed for 20-something years, 28 years or something, and it's only been opened recently. And when I got out there, I knew it had been reopened. I got in there with the camera. I've got video footage of this on the channel Capricorn TV. You can check it out. But inside these boxes, Jimmy, just let me explain this. These are 100-ton boxes. Okay, they started with a piece of granite, basalt, or whatever. Really hard to carve, by the way. Extremely hard to carve. Very, very hard on the Moscow. They shipped this stuff 500 miles away from Aswan. Probably started with a piece twice the size. They made the lid and the box out of the same piece, reduced it down to about 100 tons, then dragged them down a tunnel, okay, just the width of the box. And then offshoots off the tunnel, there's like 33 rooms or something like that, 30 plus rooms offshoots of this tunnel. And the offshoots of the rooms drop down a level as well. And then they maneuvered these boxes into these tight little rooms that are down a level and down a tunnel. You couldn't get enough people in the room, Jimmy, to push the box. You would need about 1,000 people to push a 100-ton box.
Can you imagine the sweat, the humidity, the lack of oxygen, the lack of light?
The boxes shouldn't even be in the room, Jimmy.
No, right. Can you just imagine? If I had a time machine, I mean, if I could go back, I would. Well, first I would go to I'd go to Israel. I'd go right back to Jesus and pull him off the cross. That's what I would do. But the other thing that I would do, the other thing that I can't even believe I just said that. Let's offend our audience. Well, half of the audience went, yeah, Jimmy, I do the same thing. But the other, I would go right to Giza. I would go to Luxor. I would go to that's where I would like to actually see how they pulled off all of that. The obelisk and how that was mined and moved.
Some of the carving on the obelisk. Just to finish on the Serapeum before I go forward.
Yes, let's stay right there. I'm with you. Let's go.
I have an LED light and I'm flashing it on and off, looking at its reflection in granite. I'm looking at the reflection of an LED light in granite. That's how perfectly flat mirrored surface this is. You can put it like a titanium straight edge on it and shine an LED light between the surface and the level, and no light will shine through the crack. It's so flat. It's a perfectly flat surface to within 1,000th of an inch, and it's perfectly parallel both ways, the lengthways and the widthways. And, that tolerance is just so unnecessary for a
box, yeah.
Too. and they say that these were bull sarcophagus, that they put bulls in there. That's just pulling ideas out of a hat.
Right.
There's no evidence to back that up. Nothing. There was crude hieroglyphs scratched into them at a later date. These things are heirlooms from an older civilization, for sure. Highly engineered. And the thing about Chris Dunn is what I love about him, another fellow engineer as well, is that, he says, like, where is the tools to measure this box? Never mind make it. Forget it. You need to measure the tolerance. Never mind create the box. To get that tolerance, you need to be able to measure it. And where's that? And we need sophisticated tools to measure that today. Metrology, the science of metrology. That's the key thing that Chris focuses on.
We can swing away from Giza for a second, but it's my favorite subject. But when you look at Cusco or some of the things that are going down in Bolivia and Peru, and you look at those megalithic walls, and you take or Baalbek too, we can't let that go. But when you look at that and you look at how those rocks are cut, my question is, and I want to know your theory on this because nobody really knows. Do you think that they heated those rocks up? Do you think that's the only way to get? Because the thought of somebody carving stupid angles like that for no apparent reason, when you could simply cut square blocks and build your wall, and to go and build these carve these crazy shapes, it would seem to me, looking at that, it would take you thousands of years to carve. I mean, for no reason. It's stupid.
Actually, I spoke to my girlfriend about this last week, and then I had another conversation a few weeks ago again, funny enough, and I am fully convinced, Jimmy, they had a way of softening stone. I don't know about heat, maybe sound. I don't know. It might not be heat. I think they softened the stone, that's for sure. I think they were softened. I don't know whether heat softened them or...
But they would have to soften them to putty. I mean, not soft stone like sandstone soft. I mean, it would have to be malleable.
Soft, it mightn't be liquid, but something like a putty. Yes, exactly. Matter manipulation. However,
can we do that today? Can we soften stone today through sound or any other?
There is no method. Actually, I'll tie that in. I'm going to tie that in with some Babylonian artifacts in a minute, Jimmy. Because I think they had a way of softening stone in Babylon as well, ancient Sumerian. I wrote a paper on that. I did my Master's of Research Science and Society on Sumerian seals from a mechanical engineering perspective and also a research perspective. But I'll come back to that in a second. I'll tie it in and I'll tell you why. I had 3.5 weeks around Cusco in Peru, Jimmy, last year. Fascinating place, fascinating time. I seen every major megalithic, apart from walking the Inca Trail, because you got to book that something 6 months in advance. But I've seen most of the impressive ones. But when you go to a place called Zone X, it's above Sacsayhuaman. So you have Cusco in the valley. Above Cusco, you got Sacsayhuaman. And then above Sacsayhuaman, you have a place called Zone X. And it's called Zone X because it is a mystery. It's just the most bizarre. I was in caves, Jimmy, and they have blue tape, do not enter. And I just pulled the blue tape out of the way and went straight in. And you come out like somewhere, like people get lost in them, like, and I didn't know that at the time, but I just went and have a look. I was safe enough. I came out, there's megalithic walls there just forgotten about, Jimmy. They're just being reclaimed by the soil. But all across Zone X, you walk down to Kenko. And Kenko is another megalithic. They're just these things are just dotted. There's Kenko. That's pretty close on the way down to Sacsayhuaman as well. And as you look down, you see one below the other. But on the route to Kenko, there's all these natural rock formations just jutting out of the land. And then it's like somebody came with a laser and cut cubes out of them, okay? And they're not like any building structure. It looks like they were practicing their laser equipment on little bits of rock outcrop as they were walking down the valley. That's what I'm trying to describe to you. And you sometimes have like a square and then a right angle square with an overledge on top of it. I've got photos of all this stuff. I think it's the most. I think Zone X for me was one of the most. It's like they were practicing their skill set of cutting stone, Jimmy. Whatever they were doing or how they did that. But overledges, there was no known function for this stuff. It's just random pieces of stone and it's scattered everywhere. Now, you'll see this stuff in Sacsayhuaman and Kenko, where you go inside. They did match these temples or whatever you call them into the natural rock formation. And
right.
They put what they call upside down steps. Like you're going into the underworld.
Right.
And then, so you will see them at the temples too. But just across that little bit of stretch of the valley from Zone X down to Kenko, you just have to walk through the landscape for about a mile. And you'll just see bits of rock just carved up in the middle of nowhere.
What's more impressive to you, Cusco or Giza? To me, Cusco? It's insanity. You look at that and it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, if you take Cusco, if you take the Sacred Valley, for example, we call it the Sacred Valley because it's not just Cusco; it's Cusco and Coricancha and everything around the Sacsayhuaman. Right. But if you look at Ollantay Tambo and Sacsayhuaman probably more so than anything, but taking in Sacsayhuaman and Ollantay Tambo, the stones came, only in Taitan, but the stones came from the other mountain, Jimmy.
Yes.
They have 50-ton pink granite slabs transported from one mountain down the valley and back up again. And we did that today as a civilization, Jimmy. We would need to build a massive road, massive transport vehicles to get that stuff across the valley and down.
I mean, we keep saying it every day. I mean, these types of facts, but
it's a basic fact.
I know it's crazy. Yeah, it's great. And not only that, but when you look at the some of those walls down there in that valley, where you can see the different civilizations that have added onto the walls. So you look at the most intricate, the most badass ones are the oldest ones. And then as you go up the wall, you can see it get cruder and cruder and sloppier. And then you get to like the Spanish at the top. It's just like,
you see the layers of history. It's visible. It's visible, Jimmy. It's actually woman, by the way, that the stones that come, I think the nearest quarry for those were like 30 miles away, 35 kilometers, 30 miles, something like that, Jimmy.
Right.
Massive distance.
Yeah. Let's grab a quick phone call. Somebody keeps calling in. Let's just grab this really quick and see what's up. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black with James Swagger. Who's calling? Where are you calling from?
Hey. Jeremy, Kansas. Brother.
Oh, hey, Jeremy. How are you, man?
Hey, Jeremy.
Doing good. Hey, Mr. Swagger.
Nice to talk to you, Jeremy.
Jeremy's a fade or not.
I think the work that you're doing is very important, man. The more we can get this stuff dated, that's that stuff they can't get around the dating and stuff. The older we can date this stuff, the more we can prove that stuff was going on way back, dude. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, Jeremy.
So I think you're doing excellent work, Mr. Swagger. Hey, Jimmy, real quick, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I want to shout out to two people real quick. I want to shout out to Gina and Steve. They're big fans of yours on TuneIn. Anyway, they made me do that. And also, Mr. Swagger, I looked up LaGrange last time you talked about it, and you can definitely tell that's human made. But it's still, for that time frame, very sophisticated. So you look at things like the pyramid. Come on, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
They had to have had help with the pyramids, and some of the other stuff we're finding, like the stuff down in Bosnia and a lot of the stuff around the world. They just had to have had help. Like, how can they even argue that?
Jeremy.
How can they argue that the Sphinx is 7,000 or 5,000 years old? That Sphinx has been there 20,000, 15,000 years, no doubt in my mind.
You've got
anyway, man.
Hey, Jeremy, before I let you go, you got one crack at James here. Fire off a question to him before you go.
Okay. James, what do you think the most important thing is as far as these structures, like the smoking gun, as far as getting the scientific community to understand that these structures are way more ancient than what they say they are.
Okay,
smoking gun. How can you convince them?
Thank you, Jeremy.
Sure.
You're welcome.
All the best.
Yeah, I think the Serapeum that I mentioned, the reason I mentioned that is it is one of the biggest smoking guns. Chris Dunn will tell you that too. I think this is it. We have it. It's the Serapeum, but you're talking to a brick wall, pardon the pun. These Egyptologists do not want to talk about ancient technology. They don't want to. The Egyptians were dummies. They're copper chisels in the head. That's all they have. They have this copper chisels phrase over and over playing on a loop on a broken record, and they can't get off it, and they can't get off that train, and it's like, I don't think they're ever going to see it. I think we're going to be another generation of people before we get that. Unfortunately so. However, I think we have the smoking gun. You can analyze the pyramid all day long, but when you got stuff that is like space age precision, like the Serapeum boxes, do not talk to an Egyptologist about it. I know one. He's been on my show. They're sarcophagus for bull. End of story. Because they have some hieroglyphic text to prove it. Although they're looking at evidence in plain sight and refuse to acknowledge it. So, talk to an engineer, and a scientist, you'll get them on the side. Same as Shock. Shock talks to the geologists back him up about the Sphinx. However, if he talks to the Egyptologists, they don't. So don't go near the Egyptologists. It's not their field anyway. You know, I think we need to get this stranglehold off science. Let scientists do the science work. Let the Egyptologists do the Egyptology work. Let the geologists do the geology. Let the engineers do the engineers work. You know, why is there Egyptologists making engineering this perspectives to the public? You know, they talk about this grand gallery, and then they talk about the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber.
Oh, man, another. We went down again. Right at the top of the hour, too. Oh, jeez. Okay. Keith, run some music, and I'll get James Swagger back. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Technical issues tonight. Wow, strange. Stay with us, everybody. Don't go anywhere. All right, everybody, welcome back. Fade to Black. We've got James Swagger live from Ireland, Bespoke Radio for the Masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Before the break, James, we were talking about the molding of rocks in South America. That's what I think. I think they were superheated, even though we don't do that today and we don't have that technology. But when you look at that, there's no real logical reason to spend all of that time and labor and resources, back then, so long ago, into that, when you could be, farming, food, clothing, and your basic survival of every single day. Why would you put all of the village into the mining of these rocks, the quarrying of them, the moving of them, and then building these intricate walls that seem to be there for no apparent reason either? Sure. And we don't have that today. And is there anybody out there doing that kind of research, trying to superheat basalt or trying to superheat granite to get it to where it's molten?
We don't have anything to even go at it, try it, Jimmy, other than plain heat. I don't think it was heat, Jimmy. I think you're right to say that they were softened. However, I think it was from a vibrational sense or an acoustic. I say acoustic because of the lack of a better terminology. These were acoustic civilizations too, Jimmy, and that's why I say that. I say that with no mean stress. I mean, these guys had a knowledge of acoustics as well as astronomy. All ancient cultures in the world do. The Egyptians, the Great Pyramid is an acoustic monument. It's acoustically tuned. I mean, a lot of evidence of that in Sacsayhuaman. When you stand across from that wall that I'm talking about, that zigzag wall, that, some of the stones, by the way, Jimmy, I'm 6'3", and I have a reach of 7 foot with my arm above my head, and I only come halfway up the stone, and the stone weighs 120 tons, and all the other stones around it are sitting so close to it and married into it, perfect joints. You can't get a sheet of paper between it. It's like they were softened at one point. However, when you stand across from that very wall we're talking about, there's an acoustic effect because there's a zigzag acoustic waveform comes off it. You can hear echoes and you can hear conversations coming back at you. It's an acoustic monument. You have the Moray Bowl as well, in not far, 50 kilometers from Sacsayhuaman. This acoustic bowl dug into the ground. It's again, you can hear conversations in the bottom of this bowl, this big giant pit in the ground, like concentric rings. It looks like it's an auditorium in a way. However, these guys had knowledge of acoustics, as did the Egyptians, as did the Mayans. Everywhere you look at ancient civilizations, they seem to have a knowledge of acoustics. Even the megalithic builders. This is why I researched this, Jimmy. Stonehenge is equally an acoustic monument as it is an astronomy monument, but people don't. They see the astronomical alignments because of the sun coming in and all this trick of light and all this stuff going on with the alignments, but they don't get the acoustic because it's not as obvious to see or read. However, in Peru, I was actually in the Coricancha, Jimmy, ready for this? And a native Quechua guy told me through broken Spanish and English, and I was getting a Spanish guy to translate for me. However, he told me, he seen me looking at these holes in the side of the Coricancha, and I was asking him, does he know why? And he goes, yes, our ancient legends tell us that the thing is, they're all of different lengths, Jimmy. The holes go inside the Coricancha. Now, each room inside the Coricancha is so perfect, Jimmy. I mean, there's a tiny little stone 2 inches, and it's perfectly married in. There's no structural reason for doing it. There's an acoustic effect. If you stick your head into a niche, you can hear it down the corridor. Each room is so laid out like laser precision. These blocks are so tight together. However, there's 3 holes going through the masonry from the outside streets inside to the first room. Now, each one of these tubes, if you want to call it that, is of different length, and they're like panpipes, Jimmy, okay? And he said that when the winds blow, it's the signal. They only have 2 seasons. They have the rainy season and the not rainy season. And when the rainy season comes in, the winds blow, and they blow heavy, and they used to activate the Curry Cancha into it, like it sang. The Curry Cancha basically sang with the wind, whistled in the wind, because there was a 3 windpipes activating this first room. They knew when the climate was going to change because of the Curry Cancha would sing, basically. You know, it's phenomenal what these guys had in terms of a technology. They were acoustically minded. They were also a hydraulic civilization too. We say hydraulic as in they were able to move water better than the Romans. I've seen the most impressive hydraulics of any ancient civilization in Peru. I'm talking tunneling through mountains, Jimmy, putting aqueducts and burying them. They buried the aqueducts, and they were just bringing water out wherever they wanted it. They stick it back in the ground again and redirect it, and then it pops up again. And then they'll sometimes split the fountain of water from 1 stream into 2, into 4, and back into 1 again, and make it disappear. They were just showing off to me this stuff, man.
How can we get hardcore science, the orthodoxy? How can we get them to finally look at all of these megalithic sites around the world and figure out once and for all definitively how this stuff was done? It seems
twofold, Jimmy. We're not. We're going to overtake them. The alternative science community is growing. Now there is a lot of, wackadoos as well, Jimmy. You know what I mean? Some people just go and just recant anything. They make stuff up, basically. But there is some science and engineers, and and it's some good work being done, Jimmy. There really is. And eventually it's just going to overtake. I mean, it's happened with a few ancient sites, Jimmy, where the alternative community is driving the research outside the non-brave or the what's the best politically way to say it? The academic field is not a brave, courageous, the non-courageous field. It's the alternative scientists or the alternative historians outside that community that is driving it. And it's usually multidisciplinary guys doing it. I just want to tie in the Babylonian cylinder seals too, Jimmy.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Because when I looked at these things, Jimmy, I love the British Museum, and every time I'm in there, I flock up to the Sumerian exhibit. Now, these cylinder seals, they're made out of nearly every type of stone we have. They have hematites, crystals of alabaster, chalcedony, granites, diorites, really hard ones to really soft ones, lapis lazuli, carnelian, every type of color and crystal and stone, and really, really hard ones too, Jimmy. Now, it looks that the older ones, dating like 4000 BC to 2000 BC, are more precise and more intricately carved than the later ones. It's like, because these things are going over several thousand years. However, these cylinder seals are basically about 1 inch long, and they have an intricately carved picture into the cylinder, so that when you roll the cylinder into a clay, it comes out as a picture. Yeah. Now, the picture that's carved into the cylinder starts at one point, goes around the cylinder, and comes back to the start point again. Okay, so they were able to carve in 3D, Jimmy, okay, to a depth of 1 to 2 or 3 millimeters, okay? And in that depth of 1 to 2, 3 millimeters in a rotational carving, okay, they were carving in 3 dimensions, basically, Jimmy, okay? And it rolls an embossed surface, so that when you roll it into the clay, it leaves an embossed surface. So it's reverse embossed 3D carving in some of the hardest material that we have today. And here's the real kicker, Jimmy. Okay, if that's not bad enough, sometimes you actually can't see the image in these cylinder seals until you roll it into the clay. In other words, you cannot see what you're carving. It's not a question of microscopes, or it's not a question of magnifying lenses. You cannot see it because some of these stones are multicolored. You can't even see the pattern. You lost yourself in the pattern. They're so intricately carved. Now, not only that, Jimmy, you also have to look at the human anatomy. A lot of these scenes that they roll, they're like lions being wrestled by giants or, some angels or winged creatures or whatever. Whatever the pictographs that are on these cylinder seals. There's Sumerian cuneiform script on them too. But if you draw the human body or any type of anatomy of an animal or whatever, you need to be very, very skillful as an artist just to do that on paper, Jimmy.
Right.
You need to know anatomy to be able to draw anatomy. You can't, it's not like drawing a picture of a house or a tree or whatever. You need to be very familiar with anatomy. It's very, very hard to do on paper, Jimmy. I'm not an artist. I couldn't draw a stick man, Jimmy. However, I appreciate it for what it is. I understand the process involved in it. Now, to do that, Jimmy, by carving it in and out of your, like a depth, and then to carve it and going around the cylinder at the same time, that's like unprecedented. And the thing is, Jimmy, it's like they had a template made in metal, okay? Like a metal template. And they rolled this softened stone into the metal, the cylinder into the metal stamp and then left the impression into it so that they could take it and roll it into clay.
They did it. Okay. All right.
It's like the material was soft, right? And they didn't carve it at all. They just rolled it into the metal version or the metal stamp, and then
they reversed They reversed the process of the end game.
Exactly.
In other words,
that's the first thing that I understand in an engineering sense. Although I don't know any known method for softening any of these types of stones. And by the way, Jimmy, there's diorites and granites in there that are like really high on the Mohs scale. Not the type of stuff you want to be carving.
Diorite, isn't diorite technically a 10? Isn't it a 10 on the scale? It's just as hard as diamond.
Yeah, 9 anyway, Jimmy.
Yeah, 9. Right.
Diamond is 10 mark, and 9 is the diorites and stuff like that. But I mean, Jimmy, you can't see some of these diorite seals until you roll them into it. So therefore, it tells you, it leads you down this way. So I think these things are nobody's talking about these, Jimmy. Nobody's researching them. From what research I've seen high technology, highly carved. Now there are soft ones. Some of these cylinder seals are made out of glass, and that's what got me thinking. If they made them out of glass, well then they didn't have to carve the glass ones. They could have waited until the glass was soft.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. It makes sense. So what you're saying is they would have the picture, or you know what? Okay, well let me stay on that thought. The picture or whatever was going to be on the cylinder seal is carved, or somehow the template is laid out in steel or something else, maybe even another stone, and then the cylinder seal is then with nothing on its surface is treated or heated or somehow manipulated to accept the relief that is carved, and they roll the cylinder seal over the template, and then it would be then transferred onto the cylinder seal. That's what you're describing. Now, if that is the case, then think about the dimensions that are involved. This is where my engineering side comes in. Then the drawing has to be perfect. The length of it has to be correct. The cylinder seal has to be at the right diameter.
Exactly, Jimmy. And that's the key thing that you just noticed there, right? The diameter of this cylinder seal has to be perfect. In other words, whoever carved that, if they did carve it, we don't know they carved it. We're presuming they carved it.
Right.
However, there are evidence of lathes. I think they carved the later ones because they lost the original technology. They seem to degenerate rather than evolve.
I've seen the same thing. Yeah, the older ones are brilliant. And the later ones are like a facsimile.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Jimmy. You ready for this? You notice the very thing there. You need to start the drawing and finish it at the same point where you started on the cylinder seal. So if you're carving and going around in a circle, that's so hard to do. You really need to know where you're at on that cylinder. It's like...
Where do you start? Yeah, where did they start? What was first, the chicken or the egg?
I mean, because you keep losing the image as you turn the cylinder around.
Right.
It's bad enough. It's bad enough to do it on just a piece of straight, on a square board. It's bad enough to do it on that. Now, here's the thing as well, Jimmy. The human anatomy that these guys are drawing, or the lions, or whatever the animals they're drawing the muscles in the leg, Jimmy. Okay. When you look at these, when you roll them in clay, and you look at the clay impressions that they leave behind. You can see the sinew and the muscles in the leg, And to get that level of detail on something about an inch long, Jimmy, you know, it's so intricate and so beautiful. It's the knowledge of anatomy, but it's done to a depth. I mean, they changed the depth of that carving between 1 and 2 millimeters, Jimmy, just to get the muscles in the leg and to show motion in the pictures.
Let's we only have a few minutes left together. Maybe you know what? I'm going to get you to go. You're going to stay with us longer. I'm sorry. You're not going anywhere. I want to talk about. I want to change gears. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network, bespoke radio for the masses. We're talking to James Swigert live from 3:30, 4:30, 5:30 in the morning. Now the sun is coming up in Ireland. And thank you for staying with us tonight. I want to change gears. I want to talk about Carahunge.
Oh, beautiful, yeah.
Yes. And it's funny. You heard what Graham Hancock said. All I had to do was utter the words. And he said,
so passionate.
Yeah, he said the hair just stood up. I just can't believe I'm tingling that you've brought this up. So I'm going to start off with you with the same way I started off with Graham Hancock, which is why on God's green earth is Armenia ignored? We talk about Giza, we'll talk about Athens, we'll talk about Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, we can talk about any Machu Picchu, all things that should be discussed. Nothing wrong with any of those sites. But Armenia is not discussed. Why?
It mind boggles. I don't know why. I think I want to go to this place. I've made the decision to go. I know somebody in Armenia is going to bring me there. I don't know them personally, but I'm being referred to them. I have, like I say, Paris Harouni's book, and I just think when I look at what I have, now Paris Harouni, should I just say, was a physicist who analyzed this place. I think it's the only book on the place that was really, only research book on the place. But it hasn't been researched properly. It's largely overlooked. Even Ancient Aliens did a feature on it, and they got some team from Oxford to go out, and basically their result was there's nothing to see there, go home. And like what I find so interesting about this place is
that's Jimmy, disgusting to me. That's disgusting.
The holes in the stone. The reason I wrote a book, Jimmy, on megalithic monuments in Ireland, these passage tombs, was for two reasons. Number one, we have a lot of them covered in rock art. Rock art tells a story, therefore you have a line of inquiry, you have a line of evidence to follow if you have rock art. Makes sense. Also, the passageways have an alignment. If you have an alignment, it tells you what these guys think we're aligning to. Another line of evidence, another line of inquiry. You know, it wasn't because I lived in Ireland, it was because that's, okay, yes, I was actually living away from Ireland and I came back home. But I realized that we have alignments and we have art, two lines of inquiry that can counteract each other and verify each other and figure out some part of the puzzle. And I did figure out some part of the puzzle. I built the cosmology up that these guys had. What we have at Carahunge too is something very similar. We have these holes in the stone that have alignments to stuff on the horizon. It's just a matter of finding out the exact angle or what they were aligned to. It would be a lot of research, Jimmy. It would be a lot of time to do it. Some of it has been done by Paris Harouni. I think it could be probably done better now with better equipment, astronomy programs, stuff like that. Because the computer programs are so much better now. And that's what I used for a lot of my research, was the computer programs. However, that's a lot of measurement to take, GPS coordinates, angles of the holes through the stones, but there is holes through the stones aligned to stuff. It's a no-brainer, Jimmy. It's a no-brainer. There's holes carved through these stones. I just think it's so fascinating because not only is it megalithic, but we have something curious. Sometimes we have, out of all these megalithic places, we have ones that are very unique and have these extra little features that are merit. They merit further research. They merit the actual research, Jimmy, because there's something we can figure out about them. But like you say, Graham's so passionate about it. He couldn't hold his passion back, Jimmy, on the show, and I'm the same, and you too. And like it's
12,000 years. It's 7,000 years older than Stonehenge.
I think it's 7,000 BC, Jimmy. I think I hear quotes 7,000 BC.
Okay, so it's
9,000 years old.
Then it's 5,000 years older.
Yeah.
Okay, that's old.
That's old stuff. You know, we have stuff in Ireland, Jimmy, 5,000 BC. Some of the stuff up in Sligo here, we have 5,000 BC. Some of the stuff in Karnak in Brittany is about 5,000 BC, 4,800, something like that. So that's 7,000 years old. So, that's still pretty old, but Carahunge is like, why is this megalithic stuff popping up here and then 1,000 years later popping up somewhere else, and then 1,000 years later it seems to be a migration of.
I agree. A migration of the discoveries. Totally right. And now back to Carahunge. When you looked, you obviously were looking through the circles, the holes. Did you make any attempts at any alignments?
Yeah, and I have Parasiruni's book there to follow up on further research. Now, it's very, very difficult, Jimmy, because there's a tolerance in the angles of the stones. It could be a little. It's not just looking through the stone. There's if you look at a map, you can say it's heading north or heading south or heading east or heading west, but it's also an angle up to the horizon and an angle down as well, because some of the holes in the stones are, they're quite big, so there's a tolerance there too. So you have to kind of think about angles too. It's a lot of work in it, Jimmy. There's a lot of work in it. However, I do think it merits a heavy bit of research.
Do you think it's how does it impact you when you're there? Does it feel astronomical or does it feel religious?
Astronomical all day long. Astronomical all day long. And very close to Turkey, by the way. And there's another place called Metsamor in Turkey, Jimmy. Let me just point out, Metsamor is a megalithic complex dated to around the same time, and it's also a metallurgical complex as well. There's evidence of ores being mined there. It's probably the oldest places for ores on the planet. They were mining tin, copper, gold. They had every type of ore put on the shelf there. So this region, that end of Turkey and the border of Armenia, this region is rife with ancient stuff, Jimmy. It doesn't just sit in its own. I know it's in its own border. It's an imaginary line that we have on maps. I know that it's Armenian is this country today, but that region of Armenia and North Turkey, very, very, very interesting.
Isn't it funny how historians will tell you that the cradle of civilization is in Iraq, and there's nothing wrong with that. I get that. A lot of we can confirm a lot of things came out of there, writing, sure, farming, the wheel and so forth. But now it seems to be pointing the cradle of civilization might be Turkey and Armenia. Yeah. That maybe it all actually started up there. Maybe there was a migration of intelligence that actually went south, and quite possibly it all started in, I'm going to say it, Göbekli Tepe.
Sure. I am fully convinced it's the Turkish region, or Turkish and Armenia, something like that. And when I researched the Metsamor metallurgical complex, Jimmy, here's the thing. I did that. I wrote a little chapter or a little science paper on the mysterious origins of metallurgy. You'll get that on my website, jameswagger.com. But when I did that, I was looking at the origins of metallurgy, and I came across this Metsamor complex, which I found very, very interesting because of all the metal refinery stuff that's going back eons. I mean, they've been refining in 2000 BC and 5000 BC, and there's been levels of history and its place. And it's a megalithic complex as well. There's standing stones there and all.
I never do this with a guest, but I'm going to do this now. Spell that for me.
Metsamor, Metsamor, Metsamor. And the thing is, Jimmy, right, you ready for this? These guys were mining tin, static ore, and they didn't have a use for it, but they put it on the shelf as if they knew they were going to use it for bronzing, putting with copper somewhere down the line. So they still, it's a bit of a reach, but it implies that they had a knowledge of ores and a knowledge of alloying. Because if you found an ore and you didn't have a use for it, and if tin was pretty useless, why would you store it, Jimmy?
I'm looking at these pictures now. This is insane.
I know, Jimmy. And here's the thing. And again, Metsamor, forgotten about. This region, the people aren't getting involved in the research, Jimmy.
It's pretty phallic, by the way.
Oh yeah, they are. I should have.
That's a lot of phallus.
Yeah, and again, a lot of the megalithic stuff is, Jimmy. A lot of the megalithic stuff is, especially around Newgrange, there's phallic stones like that too. Tara Hill and Note as well.
Now, how old is Metsamore? What are we looking at here? I'm learning something for the first time.
I think that the oldest date of is about maybe 7,000 BC as well, around the same time as Carahunge, which is why I was mentioning it. It's the oldest metallurgical complex we have on the planet, or evidence of metallurgy, which is why I wrote the origins of metallurgy. Here's the thing, though, Jimmy. Metallurgy, okay, is so highly technological as a scientific discipline. Yeah, you think about it, melting ores and putting them and alloying them together. We're so advanced with our metallurgy today, Jimmy. We have these alloys for making bike frames of 5005 alloy or whatever. You got magnesium compounds and they don't rust, and they're lightweight and all titanium alloys and all this. And this alloying is the key to high technology. However, there's evidence at Metsamore that they didn't have a use. They didn't have a use for tin, stannic ore, but they put it on the shelf knowing that they could alloy it with something else down the line, and they did. Yeah? And when they got their hands on something they could alloy it with. But therein lies the problem, Jimmy, because knowledge of alloying implies high technology.
Yes.
It means you knew to put two metals together. Here's the thing. They don't even know how metallurgy started in the first place, Jimmy.
Right.
Because the layman's explanation for it, by archaeology, by the way, does it make sense? They say they chucked a piece of ore into a campfire and then it melted into metal, because a lot of these ores look like rock, Jimmy.
Right.
Like malachite is green, and all these different ores have different colors. So they chucked it into the campfire, it melted, and hey presto, they seen it was a metal and they started making it. That doesn't even make sense. There's not enough heat in a campfire to melt the lowest melting ore, Jimmy. It just doesn't make sense. Where metallurgy came from on this planet is such a big mystery. And it all started, and all roads head back to Metsamore. And that's why I point to that place, Jimmy, because you have megalithic. It's the only megalithic place I see associated with metallurgy. Now, the megalithic stuff may have came later, but this metallurgical complex goes back into antiquity, Jimmy.
What were some of the things that were excavated there? Now, look, there's not much information on Metsamore here. The Wikipedia page is literally 5 sentences.
Yeah,
okay,
sometimes
that's it. Check this out. I'm going to spend 10 seconds. This is what it says. It says Metsamore site the remains of the Metsamore Castle, located southwest of the Armenian village of Taranik in the Arm of Vir province. It was populated from the 5th millennium BC until around the 18th century AD. Excavations of the tombs of the Metsamore Castle began in 1965. The site is noted for its observatory and temple complexes, consisted of 7 sanctuaries. Neolithic stone circles dating back to circa 5000 BC stand within the historical site, interpreted by enthusiasts of archaeoastronomy as an astronomical observatory. End of story. And that's it. That's all it says. And then it continues, says they've dug up 22,000 items, almost all of it uncovered at the site. So now that's my question, throwing back to you. What kind of metal items were found?
Oh, they were mining. They had high grade copper, gold. They had several types of bronze. They mined manganese, zinc, strychnine, mercury, iron. They had everything, Jimmy. This is one of the most interesting megalithic places on the planet because it's associated with metallurgy, and we just don't get metallurgy and rocks together, Jimmy. These megalithic sites, we're not associating them with metallurgy in any time because it was the Stone Age. Yes.
What were they making from the metals? Were they making jewelry? Were they making tools?
See, there's several foundries. Let me just say that there's 3 levels of occupation here. There's the 7,000 to 5,000 BC. That puts it in the same time frame as
nothing. Yeah, right. Of nothing.
So 7,000 to 5,000 BC. And then you have another period, 5,000 to 2,000 BC. Inscriptions were found going back into the Neolithic. And then you have another 2,002 BC onwards. So there's 3 levels of construction. There was foundries found there, evidence of storing ores, There's a citadel there, as I say, and then there's all this megalithic stuff built around it too. There's just so much going on. There's levels and levels there, Jimmy. It's very, very complex to even talk about. It's just there's so many levels of history there. But they have them kind of broken into 3 regions. But basically, they were metalworking from iron ores. They had Neolithic sites, archaeoastronomy. The place was rife, Jimmy. Cyclopean walls there. Some sort of an alphabet maybe as well, but that may have been later, around 3000 BC. But even at that, this is deep antiquity. It's Armenian as well. And again, it just ties in nicely with Carahunj. I think this... this place is just so, again, scrubbed from the record and forgotten about, just like the Carahunj place. It's just not being researched properly.
No, it's just sitting in the middle of a field with grass growing. Yeah, there's absolutely zero research. I'm looking at this one picture here. It looks not quite an obelisk, but something very similar to it. I don't know how this is still standing after, so many thousands of years. But it looks to me, as I'm looking at this, that there is carving on its weather, it's worn down, but it looks to me like there was images and possibly writing on this obelisk. And it looks very tall. I mean, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, and it's still standing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I love learning stuff. I've just learned something today. I feel like...
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on the show to help you learn.
Yeah, there's a reason.
I love knowledge. This is why I do. Jimmy, there's some things I research, Jimmy, and there's not enough to write a book on it. I couldn't write, but what I love doing is I write like 40-page mini books. I've about 6 of them ready to publish, and I just like interesting science articles that I've done, the origins of metallurgy, the origins of cartography, and look at the ancient maps we have, Charles Hapgood, the Piri Reis map. However, there's such a mystery about ancient cartography. And if you look at the Piri Reis map, for example, Jimmy, right, you can actually date that to 3775 BC, and I'll tell you why. The center of projection of that map, nobody really talks about this. They all talk about the Piri Reis map. Yeah, it was shown South America, big deal. There's more to it than that, because the center of projection of a map we use today is on London, Greenwich Mean Time. Okay?
Right.
However, the center of projection of the map was Aswan in Egypt. We don't have a world map. The Piri Reis is not a world map, but we can extrapolate it to what it would be if it was the world map and find out where the center of projection is. And the center of projection is Aswan in Egypt. Well, they call it Seyon then, Syene. Now, here's the thing. We also know where the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn is on the map. However, we can extrapolate from that as well that it migrates at a known rate per year because of the tilt of the Earth, the Chandler wobble, and all this stuff, and it migrates north and south. Now we know what rate it migrates at, and it migrates at so many degrees and seconds per 100 years or something like that, and we can push this thing back to when the Tropic of Capricorn was on Seyon in Egypt, and that we can basically say that it was the last time it was on that Tropic of Cancer, it was on Tropic of Capricorn, was 3775 BC. So whoever made that Piri Reis map with the center of projection made it in 3775 BC. Well, that's when the center of projection is the time frame that it's dated to. Now, it's obviously copied from older source maps. However, I looked into all these sorts of mysteries, and here's the thing. People go, oh, well, they didn't have the marine chronometer. They couldn't have, done it. They couldn't have done it. This is like just ridiculous to even talk about it. However, you got to think outside the box, Jimmy. And I found this, here's another little bit of clever thing. I found this device called a Tanoa. And here's the thing. You need a marine chronometer to measure the roll and pitch. It doesn't get affected by the roll and pitch. It's a very accurate clock, and it doesn't be affected by the roll and pitch of a ship at sea. In other words, it's got no pendulum on it, and the clock will work at sea, and you can calculate your distance, time, and speed, and where you're going, and therefore no latitude and longitude. Very easy. The latitude's easy. You measure the angle up to the stars, but longitude is a very difficult problem. It's all time zones, and it's these 24 imaginary lines around the Earth. So you want to know where you are on a ship. This is where the British set down £20,000 to discover this in the 18th century so that we wouldn't lose our ships anymore, crashing them on the coast and losing our precious cargo of tobacco and sugar and whatever else we were carrying around the world in those times. However, these ancient maps all show latitude, longitude, and relative longitude. It shows the West Horn of Africa, and it shows the South American continent. And again, this is evidence of high technology, Jimmy. Whoever made these maps, and there's not just one of them, pretty recently one example, there's many of these ancient maps. There's the Carta Pisana dating to 1275. It's showing latitude and longitude. And they call these portalon maps because they went from port to port.
Right.
And these all flooded in ancient sources, Jimmy, probably from the time of Alexander the Great. I know we didn't talk about that, but when the Great Library of Alexandria was burnt, there was probably some maps saved from ancient times there, and they flooded into Constantinople, and then the Portuguese and the Spanish got their hands on them when Constantinople fell, and all of a sudden they started flooding into Europe, which is why we got our hands on these ancient maps. We didn't. I think we had these maps for the time of discovery. I think that's why we discovered the New World, because we had maps to discover it. However, these maps, there is another way to figure out longitude, and if they all show longitude, they obviously had a way to do it. Just because we figured it out longitude with a marine chronometer, an accurate timepiece that will keep time at sea, doesn't mean they did it that way. Now here's the thing. There is a device called a Tanawa in reference to it. And it's basically like an eyepiece and a pendulum, and you measure your angle up to the moon. And if you had accurate moon tables of where the moon could be, and you could see the moon at any given time, well, then you would know your place on the globe.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You're using the moon as a reference point, as opposed to calculating speed, distance, and time. It's irrelevant about speed or time wherever you go. As long as you can see the moon, you will eventually know where you're at. Now, that implies you need to have accurate moon models. But what did all these ancient cultures do, Jimmy? All the megalithic civilization, they were obsessed with the moon. They knew the sidereal cycle and the synodic cycle of the moon. Very, very complex to map the moon. The sun, not so much, but the moon, definitely. And this device, the Tanawa, that there is a drawing of it. Like that was what I ended up in my research with the origins of metal or the origins of cartography. That there was probably a body of knowledge, and all these megalithic builders were all maritime people. They were going between all the west coast of Europe, Britain, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Malta, top of North Africa, Morocco probably as well. There's a stone circle there, and these guys were just traversing the globe in all these megalithic places. There's ancient maps to say they had these places mapped out, and I think they just did longitude a different way. You know, they were doing it with their acumen and their intelligence rather than, technology. Their technology was their mind, Jimmy.
There's two things I want to discuss before I let you go. One, at the very, 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 very beginning of the show tonight, Richard Wilkinson tweeted in, and I promised him I would get to this question. It's not really what you do, but it's an interesting question nonetheless. And he wanted to know if you follow the works of Wilson and Blackett and their reference to King Arthur in Wales.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I never heard of Wilson and Blackett, to be honest with you.
Okay. I just had to get that out, and I've all of our Fade or Not family, when they post a question like that, I try to hit it all, and I went back through literally 1,000 tweets to find his tweet to get back to that question. So I did that. There is a documentary, and I think you and I talked about this once, but I believe it was off the air. Mm-hmm. There's a documentary out there where this researcher puts forth his theory on. And I think it ties to Cusco and Peru as well. His theory of how the blocks were formed for the Giza pyramid. And his theory is this, that they took limestone powder, not rock, limestone powder, mixed it with seawater, and added another powder. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there was another.
They poured the blocks into place.
Yes, and poured the blocks into wooden forms, and literally. Now I've seen it done. I've seen the documentary. In a couple of hours, it sets, and so when they pull the wood forms off, it looks exactly like it was quarried. Because of the marks that the wood leaves, it looks like it was carved, and boom, problem solved. They didn't mine anything. They didn't roll any rock. They didn't do it. They merely poured it in place. Have you seen that documentary?
I haven't seen the documentary, but I know the theory, and I've looked into it. Definitely, it's a great theory. I like it. I think it could explain a lot of the blocks, but not every one of them, Jimmy. You know, it doesn't explain some of the granites, like elevated to several hundred feet above the base of the pyramid.
Well, it explains it with limestone, and we do know that with limestone, obviously, that it's softer when it's quarried, and as soon as it hits sunlight, it hardens, and it, it's like it's two different stones.
Yeah, I think there's seawater creatures encased in the limestone of some of the higher levels. They may have poured some of the top blocks in place for that, Jimmy, and done a solid base of carved ones. I don't think it eradicates the whole idea of still quarrying some of the blocks.
Can you do that? Can you do the same thing with granite? Can you use powdered granite and pour that and get that to solidify?
Stone's very soft, Jimmy. Granite, no chance. Granite's got a high lot of crystal in it.
Yeah.
Crystal, quartz in it, silicon dioxide. That's what makes it. The granite itself it's the silicon dioxide, the quartz content of the granite that makes it so hard to carve. Because the thing is, the matrix of the granite changes when you go from soft to the quartz to back to soft again. And again, I think the pink granite stuff that they have, Jimmy, the obelisk that you talked about earlier, you can actually see tool marks where they carved them like a lathe, basically, into pink granite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine. I really can't. When you look at some of the examples, and I understand taking the stones, and you're sitting there, a round stone, and you're pounding it and pounding it and pounding it and pounding it, chipping it away. They must have been doing that 24 hours a day in shifts. Just pounding and pounding. That's the only way it could possibly get done. And look at Baalbek too. And when you look at the size of those stones, I mean, but this is the thing, and this is the most difficult thing I have getting my mind around, is the leader of the village, the pharaoh, or down in Peru, some leader of the village goes, okay, this is what we're going to do, and it's a good idea. And you have to convince everybody that they need to, for some reason, quarry these stones and transport them and carve them. You have to motivate these guys somehow, and that's the way my brain works. But you have to motivate them. What kind of fear or good idea are you putting in their minds to go and transport and carve, 100-ton stone and then do it again? What is it? That's my point. What is it? How are you motivating instead of, like I said earlier, instead of getting some really good food, let's make some really good wine. Instead, let's take that manpower and carve these rocks. What is the motivation?
Even the pouring of the blocks, Jimmy, right? Let's say they poured the majority of the blocks of the Great Pyramid. That's still, yes, that's still incredibly difficult, Jimmy.
Yes.
Because what you happen is, what do you do? Bring a wheelbarrow full of sludge up to the top and then pour it?
Yes.
That's still difficult. That implies a wheel and a wheelbarrow. Or do you pump it up? That implies the corkscrew Archimedes principle. Either way you look at it, it's still incredibly difficult and implying more stuff to go with it.
2.5 million times.
They say they poured a million. Maybe they poured 1 million of them, Jimmy. I know where that theory came about because they found some seawater and anemones or something, creatures or something inside the limestone blocks, which is why they think they mixed it with some sort of seawater and a limestone compound. However, that still does not explain the granite, because the King's Chamber is made out of granite, and a very 100-ton blocks, 50-ton blocks, and the unique what they call relieving chambers above the King's Chamber. It doesn't explain how they got those really big stones up to that height, So it doesn't even explain anything. To be honest with you, it serves no function really. If it's a curiosity to me, Jimmy, and it doesn't explain the granite at a few hundred feet above the base of the Great Pyramid, elevated to that height.
And I'll leave you with this thought. Again, this is the twisted mind of Jimmy Church, but that the complexity of the Great Pyramid is singular. okay, with its chambers, the way it was done, the way it was built, and its size, okay? And it, for some reason, they said, we're not going to do this again. Okay? It was that complex. It was that much work, that much math, thought, the labor. But when you're talking about those granite stones, everybody needs to understand the support in that king's chamber had to be the architect had to design it to support the weight of the stones above. Okay, it's not a solid room.
Good point there, Jimmy, because it's at a very special latitude, latitude 30. It's not exactly at latitude 30, and the Egyptologists pointed out very point saying, well, that's a bit pseudoscience, and it's not exactly 30, but they couldn't put it at latitude 30. They called it Giza prime meridian. And let's finish on this, because the prime meridian of Giza, if you drew a line going north, south through the Great Pyramid, it would hit the most landmass on the planet. Only at that, a north-south line hits more landmass by going through Giza. At the same exact place, it hits more landmass going east-west. Okay? It's the most stable place on the planet for earthquakes. There's a reason it is the Giza prime meridian, because it's the most stable place by a north-south and the east-west line. Now, it's a 30-degree latitude. If you put the Great Pyramid inside the earth upside down, Jimmy, okay? Then put the tip of the pyramid hitting the South Pole, and of corners of the pyramid, they would touch the globe at exactly latitude 30 degrees.
Is that right?
And it would be at a scale model of 1 is to 43,200.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's a very specific number for the whole lot of other mathematics. I can talk about the math all day long. However, now the point about that is that only happens at latitude 30 degrees. It's such a special place on the planet where it sits. But here's the thing. If they put it at exactly 30 degrees latitude, it would have sunk into the ground because they needed to put it on bedrock, Jimmy. They built it on solid bedrock so that it wouldn't sink. It weighs... There's 2.5 million tons of blocks at a couple of tons each. It weighs maybe 6 million tons. Something 6 million tons will sink into sand, earth, whatever. You need to put it on solid bedrock. They put it as close as they could to latitude 30 degrees, like 29.96 something or whatever. So that's why it's at latitude 30 degrees.
Fascinating. I love having you on, James. You are the best, man. I can't wait.
I'm so passionate about this stuff. Alternative history and alternative science. You know, I grew up on Hancock and Boval and Cotterell and all these guys when I was in my teens, Jimmy, and I never thought I would be interviewing them on my own show, and I never thought I would write books myself, Jimmy, on ancient cultures. I just found myself in my own terrain here one day going, look, I've been researching stuff so long, and I archaeoastronomy, you know, I just went, okay, some of the part of the puzzle here in my own backyard is not being taken care of. I'll at least do that. And this put me on a journey, Jimmy, and I love it. I love researching, and I love passion, and I love sharing information. You know that, brother.
Absolutely. When are you coming over? When are you coming over to the States? Or will they not let you in? What's up?
I want to come over for Serpent Mound, but if I come over, Jimmy, it's got to be a 3-month journey. I am not coming over. I've got so many offers this side of the globe. It's so funny. You guys have so much going over there. I want to go back to Peru again. It's like I want to go everywhere, Jimmy. And it's like, well, if I do go America, I want to start with Serpent Mound and work my way to the American Desert Southwest and look at the Hopi stuff down there and the Anasazi stuff as well. And
there's a couple of really cool spots here in the States that you would love. One, the Blue Mounds and the mounds up in Wisconsin are not only really, really old, but I don't want to offend the great state of Wisconsin, but I don't even think they know what's going on up there with that. And there's mounds all over Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, the Serpent Mound that you're talking about too as well, which is absolutely fascinating. But and here in Los Angeles, we got a really, really old In-N-Out burger down the street. It's like 40 years old. It's a megalithic structure too. You should.
How much time have you got, Jimmy?
How much time left right now?
Yeah.
Tonight, we've got exactly a minute and a half.
Okay, I can't go into. I discovered some stuff about mounds and henges because of research that somebody else was doing in Indiana, and the mounds there in
southern Indiana. Those mounds that you're talking about. Now, I'm from Indiana. I was born in Chicago, but raised in Indiana, and those mounds down there are unbelievable, and they are everywhere. If you own a farm in Indiana somewhere, on your property are a couple of mounds. They're just everywhere. You trip on them.
There's numerology of those henges and mounds, Jimmy, with 1080, 666, 555, and 43,200. And I mentioned that it's in the Great Pyramid. There's numerology associated with some of those mounds and henges. Very, very interesting. And they match with the British Isles, Britain and Ireland. I discovered stuff at the henge there's a henge around Stonehenge, and there's a henge in Belfast, the biggest henge in Ireland. And then the second biggest henge in Ireland has also got the same numerology, same diameters of the henges in America. Fascinating piece of research. I'm still up to my neck, and maybe talk again about that. Hey, Jimmy, you got to get American Stonehenge and American Newgrange on the show. I think Dennis Stone, is it?
Yeah. Those are miniature, though. They're not as big as you think.
I still think it's important for America. I think it's one of the most important sites in America.
But the American Stonehenge is knee high. Anybody could have put those rocks there, James.
You have a full-scale replica of Stonehenge in Washington State.
Yeah, we need to talk about the guide stones, the Georgia guide stones too, as well. I've got to run, man. I got to roll credits. We're up against it, brother.
Okay.
Thank you, James. All the best. I've got it. You just got to come over and hang out with Walanda and I, and I would love to show you around. Thanks a lot, brother.
If you want to come up to Newgrange, you just look me up, brother. You get on a plane over here, you'll get a tour of Ireland.
I can't wait.
When you go home, you'll be sick of them.
I want to sleep in one. Thank you, James.
Take care, brother.
All the best.
Bye now.
Whoa, where'd that come from? James Swagger. Absolutely unbelievable. Love that guy. Fade to Black. What a night. Thank you. Couple of hicks here and there. I was going to take station breaks then anyway. Somebody's hacking in. You got to love it. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out again. All of you, fade or not. Stay tuned. Coming up next is Skywatchers Radio with your host, Angel the Jackal Espino. Special thanks to Keith Rowland and Art Bell. Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Show's produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar. Special thanks to Les Johnson, also Dale Romero. Special graphics and logo by Method of Signaling. The announcers are Steve Harder and Gene Vito and Mark D. Kovar. Music is Doug Aldrich. Show intro performed by Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Douglas Dietrich, right here on Fade to Black. Thank you, everyone. I am out of here. See ya.